Okay. Okay. Good morning, friends. So we will continue with what we were doing. So some of the basics of geomorphology have already been taught to you. One more thing that we have to talk about is the geological time scale. Okay. So understanding the geomorphological time scale is essentially the key to understand many of the, particularly the tectonic processes that we will be studying. So you can very well understand when we are talking about the geomorphological timescale or geological timescale. Geological timescale. So geological timescale tells us about what? It tells us about the history of the earth. So it informs us about the history of the earth. And if we look into this history of the earth, what we will be finding? We will find that the history of the earth is around 4 billion years old. It is essentially around 4.5 billion years old. So you can understand how much huge things would have passed before us. Now, when we are talking about the geological time scale, here what we will be talking about, here we'll talk about the methods of deciphering the Earth's history. Methods of deciphering the Earth history. And यहाँ पर जो हम methods बात करने वाले हैं, we will see that these methods are also we will be later using in one of the topics of geomorphology, that is denudation chronology. Okay. Then we will talk about the geological time scale. So if we just look into the methods, so as I told you, it is the modern method. If you talk about it, is the radiometric dating method. So you can see these are two photos which were taken around 100 years apart in the Grand Canyon, and little bit changes you can see have been there, and you can understand that it takes millions of years. When we talk about the time scale and when we talk about the geological time scale, it becomes too large from the human perspective, because here we are not talking about hundreds of years, here we are talking about millions and billions of years. So one thing we can say, geological processes, most of the processes, they are slow, they are very slowly working. Like for example, if you talk about the mountains, it can take millions of years for the mountains to be ultimately built. Okay, so and can take even more longer period to be worn them down or they becoming smaller. So for example, this is here is given the geological time scale. So you can see that there is the period of Phanerozoic, which is the most recent period. And if you talk about this most recent period, it has just started around 542 million years ago. The rest of the time period, that is the Proterozoic, Archean, and in fact there is one more, Hadean. So if you talk about these three, हम उनको बोलेंगे Precambrian, because you'll see that there is Cambrian. So Cambrian से पहले जो भी होता है उसको we simply call it as Precambrian. Okay. Now very important thing is that if you talk about this phenomena of knowing about the geological time scale. So suppose there was one building, एक building थी और उस बिल्डिंग में कोई था, खिड़की थी, खिड़की से कोई देख रहा था. तो अल्टीमेटली व्हाट हैपेंड, देयर वाज दिस वन पर्सन हु सॉ, उसकी नजरें पड़ गई और उसने देखा कि बहुत खूबसूरत सा कोई चेहरा है. उसने और गौर से देखा तो देखा ऐश्वर्या राय. तो भागते हुए वो बिल्डिंग की तरफ जाने लगा. Ultimately what happened, when he reached to halfway, he realized कि this person is not Aishwarya Rai, it is Amitabh Bachchan. ठीक है, फिर भी उसने सोचा अमिताभ बच्चन बहुत फेमस आदमी है, मिल लेता हूँ जाकर के. फिर जब वो बिल्डिंग के बिल्कुल पास पहुंच गया तब उसने देखा कि अभिषेक बच्चन. वापस भाग गया. So the moral of the story essentially is that the near you are to a phenomena, whether you are in time or space, you will have more information about that particular phenomena. If you are far away from the phenomena, you will have lesser information about that particular phenomena. Okay? So same thing you will find here. कैन वी से, अगर मैं इन पीरियड्स में देखूं, इन टाइम स्केल्स में देखूं, विल सी इयॉन क्या होता है, एरा एंड ऑल दोस विल टॉक अबाउट. बट कैन यू सी फेनेरोजोइक इज मोस्ट नियरेस्ट टू अस इन टाइम. सो वी हैव ग्रेट डील ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट द फेनेरोजोइक. ठीक है, वी विल सी. अभी हम सीनोजोइक में भी जब बात करेंगे तो वी विल सी सीनोजोइक इज द मोस्ट नियर टू अस. So we will be dividing it into further one more column where we have more information. ठीक है, we'll talk it about the epochs. So within, if you talk about Cenozoic, there are epochs as well which are present because it is more near to us in time and we have thus more evidences to know about it. We have greater information about it. But when it comes to the phenomena which are far away, obviously you can understand majority of the evidences would have been lost. Because remember एक topic, एक बात हमने की थी about the phenomena or the principle of uniformitarianism. So uniformitarianism क्या कहता है, बाद में देखेंगे उसको और डिटेल में. So we will see that uniformitarianism says that there is no vestige of a beginning and there is no prospect of an end. What it simply means that the processes are continuously acting. Geomorphic processes are continuously acting and altering the shape of the earth. That means even if some process would have acted in the past, new set of processes will again work over it and modify it, change it. Okay. So again what is happening, that means many of the things which would have been there in the past, on the basis of which we are attaining this knowledge of what would have happened, most of those evidences would have been lost by this time. And thus we would have lesser information about the events of the past, but we will have more information about the events which are near to us. ठीक है, so that is the basic idea. अभी हम देखेंगे eon, era, period and epoch. But the basic question is कि we are talking about, can you see, a period 542 million years ago. ठीक है, अगर मैं तुमसे पूछूं लास्ट ईयर क्या किया था, कैन यू रिमेंबर लास्ट ईयर क्या कर रहे थे, या 5 साल पहले क्या कर रहे थे? मुश्किल होगा रिकॉल करना यार. Here we are talking about a time period which is more than 540 million years ago. So the question arises how we are able to understand all these events, how we are able to know about them. And if we talk about thus the methods of gaining knowledge about the earth history, we will see that there are two type of methods. Geologists essentially क्या करते हैं? They use dating techniques. ठीक है, तो dating techniques का मतलब वो वाला dating नहीं है जो तुम लोगों के दिमाग में सबसे पहले आ रहा होगा. Dating is essentially what? It is gaining knowledge about the rocks, the age of the rocks. Okay, so there are two type of dating methods. One is the case of relative dating, and other, if you talk about, is the case of absolute dating. So there are two type of methods. One is the relative dating techniques, and if you talk about, another is the absolute dating. Absolute dating. So historically speaking, this technique has been one of the most important technique which has given us lots of information about the Earth's history, the relative dating technique. You can obviously understand the modern dating technique would have evolved in more recent time. It has verified many of the things which we knew and concretized the information, improved upon the information. But relative dating techniques has given us lots of information. So if we talk about some of the important relative dating techniques, one important is the phenomena of stratigraphy. Stratigraphy. This technique was later improved further and it essentially became the biostratigraphy. Okay, biostratigraphy. There are several other methods, like for example, methods like paleomagnetism, other methods like the tree ring analysis, etc. But the most important among this is the stratigraphy and the biostratigraphy. अभी हम इस पे आते हैं. Then later on you can understand that we developed more techniques, like for example, others like radiometric dating, nuclide dating, others like potassium argon dating. So several methods, if you talk about, have been developed to know about the rocks. Relative dating techniques क्या करती हैं? Relate करती हैं. They will not tell you about the absolute age. They will tell you about the sequence of events, how essentially they would have occurred by relating it to other events. So if we relate it with other events, maybe we'll be able to also know about the time period in which the phenomena would have essentially occurred. Okay. On the other hand, absolute dating techniques, they will tell you essentially about what? They'll tell you about the exact age. Okay. Like for example, in radiometric dating, can you understand? You must have heard about, or you must be aware about the phenomena whereby there are several isotopes. Okay, so what they will do, there will be decay of these isotopes. So ultimately what will happen, the parent nuclei will decay into a daughter nuclei, because this decay age is fixed. Okay, decay rate of decay is fixed. So on the basis of the percentage of the new isotopes which will be present, we will be able to essentially exactly calculate what would be the age of the rocks. Okay. Similarly, if you talk about in the nuclide dating, we find that when the cosmic rays, some rocks are exposed to cosmic rays, there will be changes which will be taking place in the composition of these rocks. And essentially this change, percentage change, can be calculated and we can know about essentially the age of the rock. Okay. Similarly, potassium argon, it is also a type of dating, same thing, it is like the radiometric dating. It is particularly related with the if you talk about granite and the silicate rocks, how essentially in them the potassium is converting into the argon, which is the daughter nuclei, and again that percentage can be calculated and we can know about the exact age of the rocks. So this is the absolute dating techniques. अभी मैं इसके डिटेल्स में नहीं जा रहा हूँ क्योंकि हमारे लिए सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट क्या है, दिस इज जस्ट वी वांट टू नो एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. फिर भी जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ, बिकॉज आई हैव रिटन इट, पेलियोमैग्नेटिज्म क्या होता है, वी विल सी. यहाँ पर दो वर्ड्स यूज है, वन इज पेलियो and the other one is magnetism. Paleo means ancient. So we will see, I think you have been taught already the interior of earth. Okay. So you will see that because the interior of the earth, the structure of the core is such that the core behaves as a geodynamo. It behaves as a giant magnet. Okay, it behaves like an electric generator. So electric generator क्या करता है, it produces electricity and this electricity in turn supports a magnetic field. Okay, so same thing is done by the core of the earth. So this magnetic field, what it would do when the rocks will be formed on the surface of the earth, it is possible that these rocks will acquire the magnet. If they have magnetic minerals, these magnetic minerals will acquire this magnetic property of the earth. Once these rocks are formed, these magnetic properties will be locked in those rocks, and if fortunately those rocks are not destroyed, if they are still present, what we can do, we can study the magnetism of those rocks, and thus we can know about the past magnetic properties of the earth. So this phenomena is referred to as the paleomagnetism. So we'll get an idea about what kind of phenomena would have taken place in the past. ठीक है. सिमिलरली ट्री रिंग एनालिसिस, इससे भी पास्ट के बारे में कुछ कुछ हमें जानकारियां मिलती हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ आई कट द ट्रंक ऑफ अ ट्री, you will find that there are several rings which are there. Some might be thicker, some might be very thin. Okay, so again these rings, basically what is happening, this phenomena is referred, or this method is referred to as dendrochronology. And if you talk about this dendrochronology, essentially every year as the tree is present, it will add one ring. Okay, and the thickness of this ring will tell us about number of things of that year. Like for example, if the ring is thicker, can we say that the environment would have been conducive for the growth of the tree? Okay, if the ring, if you talk about, is thinner, it will tell us that the environment was not so much conducive for the growth of the tree that particular year. Okay, so again dendrochronology will also tell us about number of things. But what is this essentially stratigraphy and biostratigraphy, which has given us the most largest amount of information which we have about the earth's history. So for this हमें थोड़ा सा एक कंसेप्ट जो मैं बहुत बाद में लेने वाले हैं हम लोग, that is the origin and evolution of the earth's crust. ठीक है, उसके बारे में मैं थोड़ा सा बता देता हूं so that you get an idea. Scientists believe that when the earth was in its initial stages, it was a hot molten ball. Okay, and obviously if it was very hot molten ball, tell me, can we say सबसे ज्यादा heat loss कहां से हो रहा होगा? Can we say the maximum heat loss would be taking place from its surface? So can we say that the surface would be cooling fastest? Okay, so surface was essentially cooling fastest. So that means a thin crust would have essentially formed. ठीक है, we know that rocks भी पढ़ लिया हमने. What is one of the properties, important properties of rocks is that it is poor conductor of heat. ठीक है, so rocks are poor conductor of heat. Can we say that means that huge amount of energy would be trapped inside the earth, would have been trapped inside the earth. ठीक है, so in this manner the crust would have formed. Scientists believe that the first crust to form would have been oceanic crust. ठीक है, so the earliest crust which would have been formed, it would have been essentially the oceanic crust. Although बाद में देखेंगे कि एविडेंस के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जाएं तो हमें दिखता है कि nowhere or we can say almost everywhere the oceanic crust age is just 200 million years. But when it comes to continental crust can be as old as 4 billion years, we have found. Okay? Then why we are saying that the oceanic crust would have been formed first? Because we know that oceanic crust or the oceanic lithosphere, it is being recycled into the mantle. It subducts and a new oceanic crust is essentially formed, as a result of which it is renewed. And that is why it is nowhere, it is found to be older than 200 million years. Okay? Whatever be the case, this would have been the first thing, that oceanic crust would have been formed. Now, once the oceanic crust would have been formed, suppose this is the oceanic crust, because there was lots of heat inside the earth, can we say earth also wants to cool itself down? So it would have tried to cool itself down, and one way it would have cooled itself down, can we say कि अगर इसमें fractures हो जाए, suppose if there are many fractures which are created in this crust, can we say कि the heat can be released? Otherwise rocks are poor conductor of heat. ठीक है, so several such fractures would have taken place. There is a debate in geomorphology and geology, what would have been the cause of these fractures. Some say that it was naturally, it was taking place because of the magma trying to come out. Others say that it was possible because there was several meteorites which would have hit the earth surface and they would have created these fractures. So याद है हमने बात किया था डायस्ट्रॉफिज्म एंड कैटास्ट्रॉफिज्म. तो ये जो डिबेट है हम बाद में देखेंगे, ये अभी भी चलता है विद इन जियोलॉजी. इट इज अ वेरी डोमिनेंट डिबेट. Whatever be the case, those fractures would have been created. ठीक है, so अगर वो fractures create हो गए तो that means can we say magma would essentially come out above the surface. At this point of time, scientists believe कि अर्थ के पास atmosphere नहीं था, because the original atmosphere would have escaped in space. The first atmosphere would have escaped in space. We will later see when volcanism is taking place, there is a phenomena which is occurring along with this volcanism, and this phenomena is referred to as degassing. It is referred to as the phenomena of degassing. And what is essentially degassing? In degassing, there will be lots of gases which will also come out from the volcanoes. Scientists believe कि जो atmosphere of the present time as well as the oceans, they were formed as a result of this phenomena of degassing. ठीक है, so that means several such volcanic episodes would have occurred, several volcanoes would have been formed, and through that the atmosphere and the oceans would have essentially formed. ठीक है, so we are just assuming कि ये सारा phenomena हो गया and हमारा oceans and the atmosphere, if you talk about, would have developed. Now, if the atmosphere has developed, tell me, can we say that exogenetic processes will also start? Yes or no? Exogenetic processes भी start हो जाएंगे. और एक्सोजेनेटिक प्रोसेसेस क्या करती हैं? कैन वी से दे विल ब्रेक डाउन दिस रिलीफ, ठीक है, दे विल ब्रेक डाउन दीज रॉक्स एंड दीज रॉक्स विल बी डिपॉजिटेड इन डिप्रेशंस, ठीक है. सो इसके तो बगल में ही गड्ढा है, depression is present near it. So when there would have been those exogenetic processes, the sediments formed would have been deposited on the flanks of these volcanoes. ठीक है. In this manner, the first continental blocks would have been formed. ठीक है. So जब ये sediments deposit हो गए, what they did, they stabilized this structure. And now if you talk about this structure would be looking something like this. In the center that volcanic part is there and it is surrounded by what? It is surrounded by layers of these rocks. ठीक है. This structure, we call this structure as craton. ठीक है. So first क्या हुआ? First stage में there was formation of continental nuclei. Continental nuclei का denudation हुआ, that means weathering, erosion, mass wasting, वो सारे phenomena हुए. Deposition हुआ. With that deposition there was formation of this platform. ठीक है. So there was formation of these sedimentary platforms and in this manner there was formation of this craton. So craton के दो पार्ट होते हैं. The one which was this part, which was the original, that volcanic feature, this becomes a shield. ठीक है. This is referred to as the shield. And if you talk about these are the platforms. ठीक है. Now tell me, if I study the rocks of this platform, ठीक है, बाद in fact you must have read about sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks की एक feature क्या थी? What was one very important feature of sedimentary rocks? Can we say they are always formed or deposited in strata? ठीक है. So they are stratified. So these platforms, if you talk about, they were also what? They were also stratified. They were deposited in strata. Now tell me, अगर मैं किसी प्लेटफॉर्म को उठाऊं और उससे एक सैंपल निकाल करके स्टडी करूं, if I study this sample, this method of study is referred to as stratigraphy. ठीक है. Because what we are studying here, the strata, this is referred to as stratigraphy. ठीक है. So can you understand the term now, stratigraphy? ठीक है. So through this we are able to understand what would have been the case. For example, stratigraphy के भी बहुत सारे principles होते हैं. So we will see those principles of stratigraphy. Like एक common सा principle होगा. अगर मैं इसमें से पूछूं तुमसे कि कौन सी रॉक्स इसमें ओल्डेस्ट होंगी एंड कौन सी यंगेस्ट होंगी, can we say that the one which will be at the bottom will be the oldest and the one which will be at the top will be the youngest? In normal circumstances this will be the case. ठीक है. अब इसमें भी बहुत सारी चीजें हो सकती हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल थिंक करो कि जो मुझे ये जो लोएस्ट रॉक मिल रही है, ये रॉक मुझे ऐसी रॉक मिल रही है जो कि इट इज लेयर लाइक शेल फॉर एग्जाम्पल. तो शेल इज अ काइंड ऑफ सेडिमेंट्री रॉक which is made up of very fine sediments. ठीक है. And these fine sediments very commonly would be produced from the phenomena of chemical weathering. ठीक है. So this tells me what? कि वो टाइम पीरियड ऐसा होगा जब केमिकल वेदरिंग वॉज वेरी एक्टिव. ओके. और केमिकल वेदरिंग के बहुत एक्टिव होने के लिए व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड? इट इज रिक्वायर्ड दैट द टेम्परेचर एंड ह्यूमिडिटी शुड बी हाई. ठीक है. So can you understand? If I study this strata, I will be able to know what kind of climates would have prevailed at that particular period of time. ठीक है. एक और पॉसिबिलिटी हो सकती है. one more possibility can be that in this strata there is a possibility that there might be presence of fossils. You know what are fossils? The remains of dead organisms. So there is a possibility that there might be some fossils might be preserved. So again, can I say I can study which fossils would have been present here, and if the time period varies, we know that species evolve. You know about the principle of evolution. So species क्या करते हैं? They evolve. So that means different time period had different type of species. ठीक है? So if I am suppose finding one type of species here, another type of species here, and a third type of species here, is it telling me that these were definitely formed in different time periods, separated by long intervals of time? ठीक है? अब मैं किसी एरिया में मुझे ऐसा मिल रहा है, सपोज इफ आई एम फाइंडिंग दैट दूसरा एक जगह का मैं स्ट्रैटिग्राफिक कॉलम पढ़ रहा हूं, एंड आई फाइंड दैट देयर इज ओनली प्रेजेंस ऑफ फॉर एग्जांपल 2 and 3. नाउ कैन आई कम टू कंक्लूजन दैट this structure would have been formed when this second period would have started? Yes or no? ठीक है? So through large sample study I can create essentially a geological time scale if I find so many common things around the globe. So on the basis of that, what scientists have done, scientists have created a geological time scale on the basis of these stratigraphic columns. बाद में जब बायोलॉजी में और डेवलपमेंट हुआ तो वी बिगैन टू स्टडी द फॉसिल्स. यू कैन वेरी क्लियरली अंडरस्टैंड इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द नंबर ऑफ रॉक्स विच आर देयर एंड द वेराइटीज ऑफ रॉक्स, दे आर लिमिटेड. ओके, सो दे वर नॉट एनफ टू डिफरेंशिएट मेनी थिंग्स. बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू द ऑर्गेनिजम्स, देयर हैव बीन सो मेनी टाइप्स ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स सिंस द अर्थ हैज बीन प्रेजेंट, and there many of their fossil remains are there. So when this method developed, ultimately it further helped to curate the information which we would have got from the stratigraphy, and thus stratigraphy later became what? It became biostratigraphy. Okay, so this is the way we have been able to gather lots of information about the interior of the earth. Raj is here asking that will you be dictating? Raj, there is no need to dictate. This is something which we just need to understand. इसलिए मैं कोई डिक्टेशन नहीं कर रहा हूं. जब डिक्टेशन वाली बात आएगी तो we'll do that. So let us talk about some key principles of relative dating, that is stratigraphy. So this is something which we were talking about. Suppose there is denudation taking place. Denudation is mixture of what? Weathering, mass wasting, erosion. All these processes together which are leading to the lowering of the earth's surface, these are referred to as denudation. Okay? So if you talk about here what is happening, there is denudation of this land taking place. Sediments are being formed, and sediments kahan par deposit ho rahe hain? They are being deposited in a depression. This depression, as we have said before, it can be a lake, it can be an ocean, okay, whatever. So you see, layer by layer, what is taking place? The sediments are deposited one over the other. ठीक है? अब इसमें क्या हम एक प्रिंसिपल निकाल सकते हैं? Can we take out one principle out of it? One principle can we say would be principle of superimposition. ठीक है? So the one which will be formed essentially earlier will be found below, the one which will be found later will be superimposing on that older one. Okay, so if you talk about here, obviously the oldest is this and the youngest one is this. Okay, so is this right? Obviously it is right. So you can see the most basic principle of relative dating is the law of superposition. इसको लिखना चाहते हो तो लिख सकते हो. So we are talking about what? We are talking about the principles of stratigraphy. The heading is principles of stratigraphy. And if we talk about the principles of stratigraphy, the first principle, it is the principle of superposition. So you can write, what is superposition? The law of superposition states that in an undeformed sequence, of sedimentary rocks, each bed is older than the one above. ठीक है. So this is the first major principle of stratigraphy. Then suppose कि ऐसी कुछ सिचुएशन थी, पहले से ये स्ट्रैटिग्राफिक कॉलम एग्जिस्ट करता था, ठीक है, एंड मैग्मा इंट्रूडेड इन दिस स्ट्रैटिग्राफिक कॉलम, ठीक है. नाउ कैन आई कम टू कंक्लूजन this stratigraphic column would be older than these volcanic rocks, ठीक है. So this stratigraphic column is older than this volcanic rock. So this is the principle of cross-cutting relationship. So also when magma intrudes and crystallizes to form an igneous intrusion, we know that the intrusion is younger than the rocks that were intruded. So this is the principle of cross-cutting relationship. So इसको लिख लेते हैं. This is the next one, principle of cross-cutting relationship. Principle of cross-cutting relationship. So इसमें लिखते हैं, when magma intrudes and crystallizes to form an igneous intrusion, comma, we know that the intrusion is younger than the rocks that were intruded. ठीक है. So this is another way through which we'll be able to know about the age of the rocks without doing absolute dating. We can say that which one is older and which one is younger. ठीक है. So this is the principle of cross-cutting relationship. देखो, ये जो मैं जिससे करवा रहा हूँ, इट इज़ अ सॉफ्टवेयर, ठीक है. तो इसमें कोई पीपीटी वीपीटी नहीं है और यहाँ पर पीपीटी की ज़रूरत भी नहीं है. You just have to understand. Similarly, there is another principle which is principle of original horizontality. So third principle को principle of original horizontality. So it refers to the fact that the layers of sediment are generally deposited are generally deposited in a horizontal position. Generally deposited in a horizontal position. ठीक है. So this is the principle of original horizontality. सिंपल सी बात है यार कि अगर डिपोजिशन हो रहा है, मुझे ये बताओ, एक ये है और एक ये है, इज इट पॉसिबल कि डिपोजिशन यहां पर हो जाएगा इस तरह का? द स्लोप इज स्टीपर, द सेडिमेंट्स वोंट बी एबल टू स्टे देयर, but here if the sediments are getting deposited, is it possible? Obviously yes, it is possible that the sediments will be deposited here. ठीक है. So this is the principle of original horizontality. So you can see ये यहाँ पर एक सैंपल दिया हुआ है, and these rocks you can see horizontally they are not present. They can be present, and in many areas, like for example in mountainous areas if we go, तो वहां पर हमें क्या मिलता है? वी कैन फाइंड दैट द रॉक्स माइट बी लाइक दिस. ठीक है. सो इवन इफ द रॉक्स आर लाइक दिस, स्टिल कैन वी कम टू वन कंक्लूजन दैट दिस माइट बी द यंगेस्ट एंड दिस माइट बी द ओल्डेस्ट, बिकॉज ओरिजिनली तो डिपोजिशन जब हुआ होगा तो ऐसे ही होगा ना. लेटर ऑन देयर वुड हैव बीन कंप्रेशनल फोर्सेस which would have bended these rocks and it would have become like this. ठीक है. So this is essentially what principle of original horizontality. So originally, even if they are today tilted, originally what would have happened, as they would have been deposited, they would have been deposited in a horizontal manner. ठीक है. So that is one of the principles. So therefore when strata are folded or inclined at a steep angle, we conclude that they must have been moved into that position by crustal disturbances sometimes after their deposition. And again on the basis of that we can decipher which one is the older and which one is the younger. ठीक है. So that is one of the things. Then when layers of rocks have been deposited without interruption, we say they are conformable. तो इसको भी लिख लो. When layers of rocks have been deposited without interruption, they are said to be conformable. ठीक है. बट थिंक करो कि हमें जो ग्लोबल स्टैटिग्राफिक कॉलम है, हमने एक जनरल ग्लोबल स्टैटिग्राफिक कॉलम बनाया. ठीक है. उसमें हमें रॉक्स ये स्ट्राटा मिल रहा है. This is the kind of strata which we are getting. ठीक है. But at a region we are studying the stratigraphic column and we find that the strata which we are getting there is this. So क्या इसका मतलब हुआ? One is missing, this one is missing. So this type of situation we are calling it as unconformity. ठीक है. It is not conforming to the average which is essentially found. ठीक है. अब इसके बहुत सारे रीजंस हो सकते हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल एक कॉमन सा रीजन थिंक करो कि जब ये फॉर्म हो रहे थे तो डेफिनेटली डिपोजिशन हो रहा था एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट दे वुड हैव बीन फॉर्म. बट सपोज करो कि जिस लैंडफॉर्म में डिपोजिशन होना चाहिए था वो लैंडफॉर्म उस टाइम पर, ये जो सेकेंड वाला टाइम पीरियड है, at that time that landform was entirely above the sea level. So if it was entirely above the sea level, can I say there was no deposition taking place? Mostly what would have been taking place? Erosion would have been taking place at that point of time. ठीक है. So there was no deposition taking place and thus we know that why this is missing. ठीक है. So if we are finding an unconformity, can we say possibly it can tell us about the sea level change which would have occurred at that period of time in that particular area? ठीक है, तो देखेंगे बहुत सारे रीजन से सी लेवल चेंज हो सकता है. तो बट यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड दिस इज रेफर टू एज द सिचुएशन हियर व्हेन देयर इज conforming, there is uninterrupted, if you talk about the layers are found, that is conformable. So here see, which I was talking about, again see what happened earlier. You will see sequence kya hai. Earlier this was below sea level, so what was taking place? There was deposition taking place, but there was a sea level change, because of which again erosion started and it removed particular strata. Later what happened? Again it came below sea level and the new sediments began to be deposited. But the sediment, when erosion was taking place, what happened to those sediments? They were removed. So see again, it was below sea level, so deposition was taking place, but upliftment and erosion began. Again subsidence and new layers of sediments got deposited. So at this point of time, what we are finding? That layers are missing. Okay? So when this situation happens, we call it as unconformity. So no place on earth has complete set of conformable strata. Everywhere the deposition of sediments have been interrupted many times. So लिख लो इसको, no place on earth has a complete set of conformable strata. Full stop. Everywhere the deposition of sediments has been interrupted many times. Full stop. All such breaks in the rock records are termed as unconformities. Full stop. Unconformities represent a long period during which deposition ceased. Full stop. Erosion removed previously formed rocks. And then the deposition resumed. ठीक है. So जो चीज वहां पे चल रहा था, you can see earlier it was below the sea level, so there was deposition taking place, then there was upliftment and thus erosion began. Later again subsidence occurred, so it came below the sea level. So here when the rocks have been removed, layers have been removed, that is basically what? Unconformity. ठीक है. So unconformity will tell us many things about that particular time period. For example, अभी हम यहाँ पर we are talking about this situation of because of subsidence. ठीक है. मगर अगर हमें ऐसा मिल रहा है कि ऐसी कुछ सिचुएशन ग्लोबली भी मिल रही है, सपोज कैन इट टेल अस अबाउट, और दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया में हमें मिल रहा है, कैन इट टेल अस ऑल्सो अबाउट द सी लेवल चेंजेस बिकॉज ऑफ अदर रीजंस दैन सबसिडेंस? ठीक है, तो दैट कैन ऑल्सो बी द केस. One type of unconformity if you talk about is angular unconformity. तो इसके बारे में लिख लेते हैं, angular unconformity. So it is an unconformity. It is an unconformity where the older strata dip at an angle different from that of the younger beds. Different from that of the younger beds. ठीक है, सो यहां पर देखो, इन दिस डायग्राम व्हाट इज टेकिंग प्लेस, दिस वाज द रॉक्स, इसका फोल्डिंग हो गया एंड उसके बाद उसका इरोजन हुआ. So now those folded stratas are there. Now it came below sea level and again new set of deposition began over it. So new set of deposition कैसा होगा? Principle of original horizontality. So they would be deposited in horizontal manner. ठीक है, but the older strata is basically what? It is still inclined because it was folded. So again you can see how the older strata is connecting with the younger strata. So when this type of unconformity is present, it is referred to as angular unconformity. Okay, so this is one of the most common unconformity. Then comes another form of unconformity which is referred to as disconformities. So लिख लो, disconformities are breaks in the rock record. Breaks in the rock record where strata on both sides of the unconformity are essentially parallel. ठीक है, तो जब यहां पर तो हमने देखा कि देयर वाज एन एंगल, बट नॉर्मल सर्कमस्टांस, इट इज सिंपली सच टाइप ऑफ नॉर्मल unconformity is referred to as disconformity. ठीक है, so that is the case of disconformity. Third type of unconformity is non-conformity. So we are talking about non-conformity. तो इसको लिखो, non-conformity is a situation where the break separates older metamorphic or igneous rocks from younger sedimentary rocks. ठीक है, सो यू सी हियर, यहां पर क्या हो रहा है, देयर वाज अ बेथोलिथ, दिस बेथोलिथ वाज एक्सपोज्ड एंड अगेन व्हाट हैपेंड, बिकॉज ऑफ दैट देयर वाज एसेंशियली, इसको इस तरह से समझ सकते हो, आई थिंक yesterday or day before yesterday you must have heard about or studied about batholiths. ठीक है, सो batholiths क्या होते हैं, suppose there was already a strata which was present and there was an intrusion of magma, a very large scale intrusion of magma took place. So this is essentially what this is batholith. Now what can happen? Is it possible कि ये above rocks can be removed through erosion? So essentially what will happen? This batholith can also be exposed to the erosional processes. ठीक है? Then what happened later on? Again it came below the sea level. So new set of deposition began. ठीक है? So this is the situation. अब यहाँ पर this rock is not at all matching with these sedimentary rocks. ठीक है? So this situation is what we are calling it as non-conformity. ठीक है? So these are some of the principles of stratigraphy and biostratigraphy. Very clearly you can understand that through this we will get enough knowledge. If we do this work globally, we will be gathering enough knowledge to know about the history of the earth. ठीक है? So through this we have been able to gather large amount of knowledge about the history of the earth, and on the basis of this we have devised the geological time scale. इसको भी थोड़ा सा बता देता हूँ. Dating with radioactivity. So numerical dates pinpoint the time in history when something took place. For example, the extinction of the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago occurred. And understanding of radioactivity allows us to accurately determine the numerical dates of rocks that represent important events in the Earth's vast history. So through relative dating, what we were doing? We were knowing the relative time periods. Okay, chronology of events we were able to know. Here we are able to know about the exact time period, exact age of the rocks. So you know कि सारा proton और etc., neutron, electron सब कुछ होता है. So there is what we call it as the there is neutrons, there is protons, nucleus का mass बनाते हैं. ठीक है? So practically all of the atom mass is in its nucleus, indicating electrons have practically no mass. By adding together the number of protons and neutrons in the nucleus, the mass number is essentially determined. ठीक है? So the number of neutrons in the nucleus can vary. These variants are referred to as the isotopes, have different mass numbers. Carbon has two well-known isotopes. ठीक है? So there is number of nucleus of carbon 12, atomic number उसका 6 है. Number of protons if you talk about कितने होते हैं? उसमें 8 होंगे. ठीक है? How many protons and neutrons does the nucleus of carbon 14 does? इसमें कहीं लिखा हुआ है. तो दो कार्बन के, कहने का मतलब है दो कार्बन के वेरिएंट है, कार्बन C12 और C14. ठीक है? तो एसेंशियली क्या हो रहा है? जो C14 है इट विल बिगिन टू डीके. ठीक है? एंड एज इट डीकेज इट विल कन्वर्ट इनटू C12. ठीक है? सो अगर सपोज करो कहीं पर C14 है, it will decay into C12. तो ये जो decay rate है, this decay rate is fixed. ठीक है? So suppose there was a rock. Can we calculate कि उसमें कितना परसेंटेज ऑफ C12 है एंड कितना परसेंटेज ऑफ C14 है? So that means this will tell me about the age. So C14 को कितना time लगा होगा to create that C12 percentage. So on the basis of that, what we can do? We can calculate the age, accurately the age of the rocks. So basically यहाँ पर क्या है? This is the parent nuclei and this is the daughter nuclei. ठीक है? So the percentage of daughter nuclei will tell me about the age of that particular rock. So this is basically the radiometric dating technique जो हम use करते हैं, and on the basis of that we can know about the absolute age of the earth. Coming back to the geological time scale. तो इस सब के बेसिस पर हमने क्या किया है? We have created a geological time scale. अब जियोलॉजिकल टाइम स्केल में if you talk about, there are number of parts. The largest division of the earth history is referred to as eon. So eon is essentially what? It is the largest division in the geological time scale. It is the largest division. And if we talk about the largest division, अगर मैं इयन की बात करूं, so earth was formed somewhere around what, 4.5 billion years ago. ठीक है, so you can understand the eon is divided into two parts. One is referred to as, here we are calling this part as the pre-Cambrian times. It is essentially the pre-Cambrian eon. Together इसको pre-Cambrian बोलते हैं. This is referred to as the Phanerozoic. ठीक है, so this is referred to as the Phanerozoic. तो ये जो डिवीजन है ये किस बेसिस पर है? What is the basis of this division? In general, we find कि जो pre-Cambrian rocks होती हैं, in these rocks either there is absence of fossils or there is minimal fossils which are found. ठीक है, so what is the time period of pre-Cambrian? There is either absence of fossils or minimal fossils found. Minimal amount of fossils are essentially found. So this period is the pre-Cambrian, or this eon is the pre-Cambrian. It is separated from Phanerozoic. ये जो boundary है ये कहाँ पर है? It is 542 million years. This boundary is located at 542 million years. ठीक है, so how we are separating the Phanerozoic rocks? This is the period when there was explosion of life on the earth. ठीक है, that means the rocks of this time period, they have abundance of fossils. ठीक है, so this was the time when there was explosion of life on the earth. Explosion of life on the earth. Rocks of this period have abundance of fossils. They have abundance of fossils. ठीक है, so जो largest division है, this largest division is eon. और कैन यू सी, अभी जो मैंने स्टोरी बताई थी ऐश्वर्या राय अमिताभ वाली, यू कैन वेरी क्लियरली सी कि वी हैव वेरी लिमिटेड इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट द अर्थ हिस्ट्री, जिसमें कि 4 बिलियन ईयर्स वी हैव वेरी वेरी लिमिटेड इंफॉर्मेशन. वी हैव मोर इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट द रीसेंट 540 मिलियन ईयर्स. ठीक है, you can very clearly see we are not dividing this period into further divisions. ठीक है, so जो further divisions है, can you see? So then there is, after eon there is era. So era क्या है? It is the second largest time division. Second largest time division. So aeon is further divided into era. It is further divided into era. As I told you, when it comes to the Precambrian, we don't have enough information. So the Precambrian times, लिख भी सकते हो, Precambrian times are very far away from us in time. As a result, we have limited evidences and information of that time period. Thus, it is not divided into eras. ठीक है, इसलिए इस इयन का एरा में हमारे पास डिवीजन अवेलेबल नहीं है. प्राइमरी रीजन इज द लैक ऑफ एविडेंसेस. ठीक है, क्योंकि अभी हमने देखा हमें सारी इंफॉर्मेशन कहां से मिल रही, रॉक से. उस टाइम की रॉक्स ही बहुत कम है. एंड इवन इफ द रॉक्स आर प्रेजेंट, majority of these rocks have absence of fossils. ठीक है, they have been greatly deformed. So it is very, very difficult to know what would have happened at that period of time in detail. So that is basically the era. Then era is further divided into periods. ठीक है, so we will see that Phanerozoic eon is divided into these three eras: Cenozoic, Mesozoic and Paleozoic. We have enough information of each of these three, so they are further divided into periods. ठीक है, so that is the case. And smallest division is epoch. ठीक है, because epoch represents what? It represents more details. Since it represents greater details, we have been able to divide only the recent Cenozoic period or Cenozoic era into epochs. Cenozoic era into epochs. ठीक है, क्योंकि it is nearest to us. So this is how the geological time scale is divided into. अब एक एक करके स्टार्ट करते हैं. तो सबसे पहले बात करते हैं द प्री कैम्ब्रियन इयन. द प्री कैम्ब्रियन इयन। तो जो प्री कैम्ब्रियन इयन है, इट इज कहां से स्टार्ट होता है? 4.5 बिलियन ईयर से स्टार्ट हो रहा है। ठीक है, इसको 3 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड किया जाता है। टुडे वी डिवाइड इट इनटू 3 पार्ट्स। द फर्स्ट इज रेफर टू एज हेडियन, एंड वी आर अगेन टॉकिंग अबाउट, ये स्टिल वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट व्हाट? वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इयॉन्स। ठीक है, हमने उसको कंबाइंडली यहां पर क्या लिख दिया था? प्री कैम्ब्रियन लिख दिया था, बट एक्चुअली बिकॉज दीज आर वेरी लास्ट टाइम डिविजन्स, तो ये भी इट इज डिवाइडेड इनटू 3 पार्ट्स. So there are actually 3 ions. So there is Hadian, there is Archean, and there is Proterozoic. ठीक है, so Hadian, Archean and Proterozoic. Hadian की अगर हम बात करें तो बाउंड्री इज अराउंड 3.6 बिलियन ईयर्स एगो. आर्कियन एंड प्रोटेरोजोइक की जो बाउंड्री है इट इज अराउंड 2.5 बिलियन ईयर्स एगो. ओके, तो सबसे पहले बात करते हैं हेडियन की. हेडियन रिप्रेजेंट्स, इसको लिख लो, हेडियन रिप्रेजेंट्स the formative stage in the earth's history. The formative stage in the earth's history. Full stop. It was the period when the earth was still being formed. Earth was still being formed. It represents a period in the Earth's history when it was still being formed. To stop, the Earth's crust or the first Earth's crust would have been formed during the Hadian. During the Hadian. To stop, since most of the rocks of this period would have been destroyed, comma, we have very limited information. We have very limited information about it. ठीक है, सो इस पीरियड के बारे में हम एक ही चीज सर्टेनिटी से बोल सकते हैं. एंड व्हाट इज दिस थिंग विच वी कैन कॉल विथ सर्टेनिटी? दैट देयर वाज ऑलरेडी फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द ओशियानिक क्रस्ट, and there are also evidences that some continental crust would have also formed. For example, the rocks found in Greenland. Greenland is an old plateau, it is a shield. So the rocks found there, we find that rocks as old as 4.1 billion years have been essentially found, which display advanced continental composition. ठीक है, so it is very clear that at this point of time the crust would have, or even the continental crust would have begun to form. ठीक है, so this period is the Hadian. One thing is very clear, इन रॉक्स में हमें कोई फॉसिल्स नहीं मिलते, एंड सिंस वी आर नॉट फाइंडिंग एनी फॉसिल्स इन दिस रॉक, दैट मीन्स देयर वुडंट हैव बीन लाइफ ऑन द अर्थ एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम। ठीक है, एक और चीज हम कह सकते हैं, हमने बोला कि ये फॉर्मेटिव स्टेज था, तो डेफिनेटली ये जो अभी हम वॉल्केनिज्म की बात कर रहे थे, इनिशियली डी गैसिंग, ठीक है, ये सब फिनोमेना कब हो रहे होंगे, दे वुड हैव बीन टेकिंग प्लेस इन द हेडियन पीरियड। ठीक है, तो एक लाइन और लिख लेते हैं। इट इज बिलीव्ड दैट द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द एटमॉस्फेयर and the oceans would have occurred in this period. So stop. However, the possibility of life existing is near to zero. ठीक है, so this period is referred to as the Hadean. Then comes the next one, which is Archean period. The Archean period. So Archean period में अभी हमने देखा, it is from when to when, 3.6 billion years to 2.5 billion years. So 3.6 से 2.5 billion years. So you see here, this is essentially the case of the Archean period. So if you talk about the Archean period, we know that it was during this period that the first life would have essentially originated. ठीक है, so first one-celled organisms must have originated during this period. तो लिखते हैं इसको, Archean comprises a very important juncture in the Earth's history. Both geologically as well as biologically. To stop. So अब हम geologically की बात करें, it is believed that it was in the Archean period क्या होने लगा, it was in this period several cratons would have formed. ठीक है, और ये जो cratons होते हैं, these cratons over a period of time they would have collided with each other to essentially lead to formation of the larger continents of today. ठीक है, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जाम्पल दूं कि हमारा जो इंडिया है, इंडियन पेनिनसुला, इट इज एन ओल्ड पेनिनसुला. So if we talk about the Indian peninsula, we know that it was formed from at least 4 such cratons. They merged into each other to form the Indian peninsula which is present today. ठीक है. So अगर इन 4 cratons की बात करें तो one of the craton it was बुंदेलखंड craton. ठीक है. Another, if you talk about which forms that area of Chota Nagpur plateau, this is referred to as the Singhbhum craton. Then if you talk about another one, this is if you talk about, it is the Bastar craton. ओल्डेस्ट इसमें इंडिया के केस में कौन सा है? इट इज द सिंघभूम, समवेयर अराउंड 3.5 बिलियन ईयर्स अगो. एंड द लार्जेस्ट वन इन केस ऑफ इंडिया इट इज धारवाड़ क्रेटॉन. धारवाड़ क्रेटॉन. So Bundelkhand was formed somewhere around 3.2 billion years ago. Singhbhum was formed around 3.5 billion years ago. Bastar was formed around 3 billion years ago. Dharwad was also found around 3.2 billion years ago. So हमने अभी क्या लिखा कि इट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पीरियड ऑफ द अर्थ हिस्ट्री बोथ जियोलॉजिकली एज वेल एज biologically. So it is in this period what we begin to find that there would have been the formation of cratons. ठीक है. इस पीरियड में क्या हुआ होगा? जो हेडियन था, अभी हमने, इफ यू रिमेंबर, वी जस्ट नॉट टॉक्ड अबाउट दिस फिनोमेना. तो ये जो वॉल्केनोस थे, दिस वॉल्केनोस को हम बोलते हैं, दीज आर रेफर टू एज primitive continental nuclei. ठीक है. सो हेडियन में किसका फॉर्मेशन हुआ होगा? देयर वुड हैव बीन फॉर्मेशन ऑफ दीज प्रिमिटिव कॉन्टिनेंटल न्यूक्लियाइज एंड देयर वुड हैव बीन फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द एटमॉस्फेयर एंड द ओशंस. सो द प्रोसेस ऑफ denudation would have started. ठीक है. एंड स्लोली देयर वुड हैव बीन फॉर्मेशन ऑफ दीज platforms. So complete formation of, if you talk about the cratons, it would have taken place when? It would have occurred in the Archean period. ठीक है. So एक पॉइंट लिख लेते हैं. लिखो, the continental nuclei or the primitive continental nuclei primitive continental nuclei formed in the Hadean period, formed in the Hadean eon, in fact, developed their platform structures, and thus developed into cratons, and thus developed or transformed into cratons in the Archean period or Archean eon. Full stop. Thus the stable continental crust began to form only in the Archean period. ठीक है. So in this manner, this is a very important point of what was happening in the Archean period. अब एक और चीज अगर हम देखें तो what is taking place we'll later talk about just plate tectonics. बस एक चीज दिखाना चाहता हूँ. I just want to show it here. You see, what is the density of the asthenosphere rocks? It is 3.25 grams per centimeter cube. ठीक है. Density of continental lithosphere, it is 3.1 gram per centimeter cube. Density of old oceanic lithosphere, the lithosphere, oceanic lithosphere, which has become older. ठीक है. So अगर lithosphere old हो रहा, can we say it will also become cold? ठीक है. Over a period of time, it will become cold. And as it becomes cold, what will happen with its density? It will increase. ठीक है. So the old oceanic lithosphere, as they become colder, their density increases, and their density, can you see, it becomes 3.28 grams per centimeter cube. Is it greater than the density of asthenosphere? Definitely it is greater than the density of asthenosphere. If it is greater than the density of asthenosphere, can we say, will it begin to subduct? ठीक है. बाद में plate tectonics में you'll see that this process of subduction is referred to as slab pull. ठीक है. The slab, the lithospheric slab is being pulled by gravity. So this phenomena is referred to as slab pull. तो जो crust form हुई होगी Hadean में, can I say by Archean this oceanic crust or lithosphere would have become cold enough to begin this subduction process? Yes or no? ठीक है. So it would have become colder and thus denser enough to begin this subduction process. And thus it is believed that Archean eon was the period when the plate tectonics would have started. ठीक है. So आगे लिखते हैं. By the Archean period or Archean eon, the oceanic lithosphere would have become older, colder and denser enough to begin subduction in the mantle. Full stop. Thus, it is believed that the global plate tectonics would have started during this period. So अगर ग्लोबल प्लेट टेक्टोनिक स्टार्ट हो गया, ठीक है, तो कैन वी से कि दिस काइंड ऑफ फिनोमेना would also be taking place. For example, I'll just show you. Two continental blocks colliding with each other and becoming combined, becoming a larger continental block. Yes or no? Definitely this phenomena would have also occurred during this period. So आगे लिखते हैं. Thus, with the beginning of plate tectonics, several smaller cratons would have collided with each other to form larger continental blocks. Collided with each other to form larger continental blocks. So if we talk about this, can you see? This is Rodinia. ये अभी बाद में आएगा, अभी we'll talk about. But how you can see that ultimately what is happening? There were several blocks of continents. वो क्या करते थे? आपस में collide करते थे. And essentially what would happen? There would be formation of larger blocks. तो अभी आते हैं इस पे हम लोग. But here is in fact this diagram is there. So you can see हमें कैसे हम समझ सकते हैं कि it would have been taking place. You must be aware that here lies the Narmada, Tapi rift valleys. This is Son, Damodar rift valley. This is essentially Mahanadi rift valley and this is the Godavari rift valley. ठीक है. तो प्रेजेंस ऑफ ये रिफ्ट वैलीज क्या दिखाती हैं कि ये वीक जोन्स थे. और ये वीक जोन क्यों थे? बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली यहां पर दिस आर द सूचर जोन्स. ठीक है. सो सूचर जोन हमेशा ही वीक होगा, ऑब्वियस सी बात है. अगर सपोज करो कि हाथ में फ्रैक्चर हो जाए एंड एसेंशियली ठीक है, आफ्टर ऑल द मेडिकल केयर इट इज नाउ फाइन, बट किसी दिन मैं बहुत ज्यादा जोश में आ गया और दीवार पे दे मार, what will happen? Can I say that the possibility of that area again refracturing will be high? So when the global tectonics will be taking on, what will happen? Those weak zones can get reactivated. And this has essentially happened in case of India. That has led to the formation of those rift valleys. Okay? So very clearly what was happening during this period, those cratonic blocks, they begin to collide with each other and that led to what? Formation of bigger continental blocks. Peninsula is a very good example of it. लिख भी सकते हो. Indian peninsula represents an example as its formation began in the Archean period. With the merger of four cratonic blocks. ठीक है. तो दिस इज एसेंशियली द आर्कियन पीरियड. अब हमें एक और चीज इसमें ध्यान में रखना है. देखो, व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द आर्कियन पीरियड और ये जो जियोलॉजिकल टाइम स्केल है, हम इंडियंस का अपना ही एक गुरूर है. ठीक है. वी हैव आवर ओन ईगो, सो वी ऑलवेज ट्राई टू पुट आवर नेम in most of the things. ठीक है. So what is happening? We also have our time scale जो हम इंडिया फिजिकल में पढ़ेंगे. ठीक है. So same these time periods we have given different names to it. So अगर मैं इंडिया के टाइम पीरियड में देखूं तो this later part of the Archean, if you talk about इंडिया में हम इसको क्या बोलते हैं? We call it as, in fact, the later part of Archean and some part of Proterozoic, we call it as Dharwad. सुना है नाम? ठीक है. So this is referred to as the Dharwad. और धारवाड़ पीरियड में बेसिकली क्या होता है? धारवाड़ पीरियड में this is the phenomena which was taking place. ये प्लेटफॉर्म्स जो फर्स्ट प्लेटफॉर्म्स हैं इंडियन पेनिनसुला के, these were formed during the Dharwad period. ठीक है. तो ये सब कब हो रहा था? This was taking place in the Archean period. So that is one thing. Then next आते हैं, उसी में आगे लिखते हैं Biologically as well, biologically also it is significant aeon. Biologically also it is a significant aeon, as life is believed to have originated during the Archean. To stop, thus first one-celled organisms evolved in the Archean. तो ये वन सेल्ड ऑर्गेनिज्म जो इवॉल्व हुए, ये बेसिकली क्या थे? These were basically the prokaryote bacteria. Prokaryote bacteria were the first to evolve. And where they evolved? They evolved it is believed, in oceans. ठीक है, how life evolved on the surface of the earth, it is still a mystery. We still don't know. ठीक है, one of the most prominent hypothesis about this is that probably some meteorite hit the earth's surface and life actually came from that meteorite. ठीक है, so this is the most prominent view about how the life originated on the earth, but we are not very sure exactly. ठीक है, बाद में देखेंगे this lack of surety you can understand, or this lack of knowledge about these things has given rise to so much mystery things, or even if you talk about religion. ठीक है, so initially it was the prokaryotes. Later what happened to them? Prokaryotes basically क्या करते थे? They would release lots of oxygen. ठीक है, and they continued to multiply, they continued to release lots of oxygen. Can we say thus water bodies would have become oxygen rich? But they were themselves adapted to survive in what kind of conditions? Oxygen less environment. ठीक है, so ultimately they created a kind of environment that they themselves couldn't survive, and thus a kind of, इसको बोलते हैं बायोलॉजी में false extinction. तो false extinction में क्या होता है? There is transformation taking place. पूरा extinction नहीं हो रहा, there is transformation या फिर evolution. So they evolved essentially into the eukaryote. They evolved into eukaryote bacteria. But important thing is, it is believed that they remained, अभी multi-celled organisms नहीं form, they remained single cell during this period, because they were mainly bacteria, or bacteria में can we say they don't have hard parts. ठीक है, since they don't have hard parts, that means their fossils will be what? It will be missing. So there will be no fossils. So the rocks of this period, they lacked fossils. So लिख लो, since the organisms of this period, of this time, since the organisms of this time lacked hard body parts, comma, fossils are essentially missing in the Archean rocks. So that is your case of Archean. अब आते हैं प्रोटेरोजोइक में। प्रोटेरोजोइक, सो प्रोटेरोजोइक का जो पीरियड था, इट इज फ्रॉम व्हेन टू व्हेन? इट इज अ वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, फ्रॉम 2.5 बिलियन ईयर्स टू 0.5 billion years. 542, actually it was 542 million, so 0.54 billion years. ठीक है, इन दिस पीरियड अगर हम देखें तो देखो एक इसमें स्पेसिफिक पीरियड है, और वो पीरियड कहाँ से कहाँ तक होता है? 1.6 बिलियन से लेकर के 0.54 बिलियन। ठीक है, इंडिया में इस पीरियड को हम बोलते हैं पुराना पीरियड। ठीक है, इन इंडिया वी कॉल इट एज पुराना। जैसे अभी धारवाड़ देखा था हमने, तो उस इंडिया रीजनल नेम फॉर दिस टाइम पीरियड इज पुराना पीरियड। बट यहां पर हम पेपर 1 के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बात कर रहे हैं, so we'll stick to that. Just I am telling you because later when we'll study Indian physical, there we'll again have to study this, so we'll recall it. ठीक है, so Proterozoic period. Now Proterozoic is a very dominant period or very important period in the Earth's history. So what was happening in the Proterozoic? In the Proterozoic, already the basic structure of the continents was being formed. ठीक है, it is during this period that the continent, जो आज के continents हैं, उन्होंने अपना structural plan develop कर लिया। ठीक है, and their structural plan, it has not much altered after that. उसमें cosmetic changes ऊपर से हुए हैं। ठीक है, लेकिन जो एक structural plan होता है, it has not much altered. This was the period when supercontinent cycles they began. So supercontinent cycles क्या होते हैं? You must have heard about one supercontinent, Pangea, सुना है? तो supercontinent एक cycle होता है जिसमें what happens? A time will come when majority of the land, what it will do? It will combine to form singular land. ठीक है, so such singular land is referred to as the supercontinent. But again फिर से क्या होगा? This supercontinent will break into parts. Again they will drift away, and this is the dissociation of the supercontinent. तो supercontinent cycle में दो phases होते हैं, formation of supercontinent and dissociation of supercontinent, और ये चलता रहता है। Or over a period of time, what has happened? Evolution of the present land has taken place in this manner. So it was the Proterozoic when plate tectonics was in full swing and the supercontinent cycles began. ठीक है, मे बी इससे पहले भी कुछ सुपरकॉन्टिनेंट साइकिल हो सकता है हुई, बट वी डोंट हैव टू मच नॉलेज अबाउट। ठीक है, there are several hypotheses about some super cycles, continent cycles existing. ठीक है, but we know about some of these with great surety. Like for example, अभी हम देखेंगे एक सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट, रोडीनिया सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट. We know it with great surety that there was presence of a supercontinent of Rodinia. ठीक है, so this is the very important geological, if you talk about phase which was happening in the Proterozoic. तो लिखते हैं इसके बारे में. Proterozoic is a significant geological period in Earth's history, as plate tectonics was fully operative. Along with several supercontinent cycles. Along with several supercontinent cycles. Several events have been believed to have occurred during this period. So अगर उन several events की बात करें तो one important event which has occurred during this period is, in this period it is believed that at least 3 and maybe even 4 different phases of mountain building, fold mountain building have occurred. ठीक है, so बाद में देखेंगे कि जो fold mountain building होता है, it is occurring in phases separated by period of calmness. So लिख लो इसको. It is believed that at least three and even four phases of fold mountain building have occurred in this period. If we talk about examples, so one of the earliest mountains, if you talk about, to form was your Aravalli Mountains. Okay. So Aravalli Mountains, if you talk about, they seem to have formed around 2.1 billion years. ठीक है, इसमें just for the sake of, because we are not very decisive exactly with the date, so around it is 2.1 billion years ago, the oldest mountains which were formed, they were Aravalli. Then there was later phase, there was formation of other mountains. In fact ये पूरा एक चेन की तरह फॉर्म हुआ, क्रिसेंट शेप. So there was also formation of this, that is Satpura mountain. So Satpura आज की डेट में they are faulted mountains, but actually as they were formed they were fold mountains. ठीक है. So Satpura की अगर बात करें तो it is believed Satpura were formed around 1.9, again plus minus 0.1 billion years. ठीक है. विंध्यन बहुत बाद, we'll talk about that later. तो सतपुरा, in fact ये जो चेंज आ रहा है, it was basically what here, छोटा नागपुर plateau mountains. So they were formed along with the Satpura, and even they extended in the northeast, in the Meghalaya. ठीक है. So this is, at least इसको 1 माने या 2 माने, that is the confusion. Then later if you talk about, was another period when there was formation of another fold mountain range. ये कौन सी है? It is Eastern Ghats. ईस्टर्न घाट्स ऑफ इंडिया। एंड ईस्टर्न घाट्स की बात करें तो इट सीम्स टू हैव फॉर्म्ड अराउंड 1.6 प्लस माइनस 0.1 बिलियन ईयर्स। ठीक है, तो एटलीस्ट हम यहां पर देख सकते हैं 2 से 3 फेजेस ऑफ माउंटेन बिल्डिंग दिख रहे हैं। एंड इफ यू टॉक अबाउट टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ प्रोटेरोजोइक देयर वाज अनदर माउंटेन बिल्डिंग एपिसोड। ठीक है, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल बाय दिस टाइम अरावली माउंटेन्स ये काफी पहले बने, तो बाय दिस टाइम जब एंड ऑफ प्रोटेरोजोइक आ रहा है कैन वी से कि वो तब तक डेन्यूड हो गए होंगे, दे वुड हैव बीन रिड्यूस्ड, देयर वाज रीअपलिफ्टमेंट ऑफ अरावलीज। ठीक है, सो इस रीअपलिफ्टमेंट पीरियड को हम इसको बोलते हैं डेली ओरोजन। ठीक है, सो यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड अरावलीज आर द ओल्डेस्ट माउंटेन ऑन द अर्थ सर्फेस। सपोज आज की डेट में जैसे असर्शन रीजनिंग वाले प्रीलिम्स में क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा है, तो वन असर्शन कैन बी अरावलीज आर द ओल्डेस्ट माउंटेन ऑन द अर्थ सर्फेस। बट द क्वेश्चन इज कि अभी भी वो माउंटेन की तरह कैसे दिख रहे हैं? रीजन इज बिकॉज दे वर रीअपलिफ्टेड लेटर ऑन। ठीक है, सो दिस इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इट वाज अराउंड 0.7 प्लस माइनस 0.1 बिलियन ईयर्स। ठीक है, so what we find within the Proterozoic, there were several mountains formed all over the world. Here we have taken the examples of India. ठीक है, so that is the one important feature which was taking place in the Proterozoic, formation of fold mountains. Then next बात करते हैं during the Proterozoic, several supercontinent cycles were taking place या फिर took place. So one such cycle is the formation of Rodinia supercontinent. This PPT we will upload in the app. ठीक है, बट इसको प्रैक्टिस करना है, बड़े क्रूडली प्रैक्टिस करो क्योंकि ये काम आ सकता है। देयर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी कि जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी में सीधा ही क्वेश्चन आ जाए, एक्सप्लेन द कंसेप्ट ऑफ सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट साइकिल्स। ठीक है, सो यूल हैव टू गिव द पास्ट सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट साइकिल्स, या फिर स्पेसिफिकली पूछ सकता है एग्जामिन द पास्ट सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट साइकिल्स. So if we talk about one of such supercontinent cycle was the Rodinia, about which we know with great certainty. ठीक है, so you can see Rodinia कैसा था. Here North America was in center. हो सकता है कि ये सब थोड़ा अलग हो. ठीक है, originally we have created taking into account the present shape of the continent. ठीक है, क्योंकि हमें उस टाइम पर ये कॉन्टिनेंट एग्जैक्टली कैसे दिखते थे वी डोंट नो अबाउट. सो if you talk about this Rodinia supercontinent, scientists believe that this Rodinia supercontinent formation was complete by 1.6 billion years. ठीक है, so लिख लो फॉर एग्जाम्पल formation of the Rodinia supercontinent. The Rodinia supercontinent was completed by 1.6 billion years ago. 1.6 billion years ago. And can you imagine, can you see, देखो हमने अभी ईस्टर्न घाट्स का डेट क्या दिया है 1.6. कैन यू सी, यहां पर इंडिया है, and which part of India is colliding with Antarctica? It is the eastern part. Okay, so it was actually here this eastern ghats would have formed. In fact, ये मेघालय प्लेटो में extend भी कर रहे होंगे इसके part. ठीक है, so it would have been during this period कि ये इस तरह से continent super continents बना. ठीक है, so that is if you talk about the Rhodinian supercontinent. And आगे लिखो, this supercontinent began to break and by 1 billion years ago it was totally dismantled. जैसे अभी डिसमेंटल हो गए कॉन्टिनेंट्स, पेंजिया पूरा ब्रेक हो गया, तो इट वुड हैव टेकन अराउंड दिस मच टाइम एंड वो पूरा डिसमेंटल. बट अराउंड 1 बिलियन ईयर अगो व्हाट बिगैन टू टेक प्लेस, अनदर सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट साइकिल फॉर्मेशन बिगैन. ठीक है, दिस सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट इज रेफर टू एज द गोंडवाना सुपर कॉन्टिनेंट. ठीक है, तो आगे लिखते हैं. However, after 1 billion years ago, another supercontinent began to be formed. Full stop. This was Gondwana supercontinent. This was Gondwana supercontinent, which was completed by the end of Proterozoic. ठीक है, so this is essentially, you can see this is the shape of this Gondwana supercontinent. So Gondwana supercontinent was actually what? It was half of the Pangaea. Why we are giving it a status of supercontinent? Can you see कि कितने सारे continents एक साथ जुड़ गए? ठीक है, that is why it is given as the status of supercontinent. Although all the land was not attached in this supercontinent, so it is given the status of supercontinent. So you can see there is South America. In this case, Africa is almost at the center. Okay, there is India, there is Antarctica, there is Australia. So all the southern continents, if you talk about, they were attached together to form this Gondwana supercontinent. And other continents that were not part of Gondwana, you can see there was North America, there was Northern Europe, and there was Siberia. There were 3 parts which were separate from each other. So North America, Northern Europe, and Siberia. Okay, so this was also the events which were taking place in the Proterozoic. Change the paragraph, आगे लिखते हैं. Next point. All in all, the continents of the present time developed their basic plan structure in the Proterozoic period. Full stop. This basic plan has not much altered. And the later changes have only added cosmetic layers कॉस्मेटिक लेयर्स। ठीक है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल देखो यहाँ पर, कैन वी से कि नॉर्थ अमेरिका का शेप अभी जैसा है इस वक्त, अभी भी वैसा ही है कुछ कुछ, यस और नो? ठीक है, सेम थिंग इफ यू टॉक अबाउट अफ्रीका, you can see this Greenland, you can see साउथ अमेरिका, ठीक है, अफ्रीका, एंटार्क्टिका, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, सबका एक शेप, एक बेसिक जो प्लान स्ट्रक्चर है वो प्रोटोरोजोइक में कंप्लीट हो गया। उसके बाद जो चेंजेस हुए हैं, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल यू कैन सी इंडिया, उसके बाद इंडिया में काफी चेंजेस हुए, लेकिन वो सुपर इम्पोजिशन है। लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल यहाँ पर मैग्मा आ गया बहुत सारा, तो उससे महाराष्ट्र प्लेटू बन गया, बट वो क्या है कि कॉस्मेटिक चेंज है। ठीक है, जस्ट अनदर लेयर ऑफ रॉक्स हैव बीन एडेड, बट द बेसिक प्लान स्ट्रक्चर रिमेन्स मोर और लेस द सेम। ठीक है, so this was the very important feature of geological changes which were happening in the Proterozoic. As we said before, what was a very important thing about the Proterozoic with respect to life? It was in the Proterozoic that the first multi-celled organisms seem to have evolved. So लिख लो, it is in the Proterozoic first multi-celled organisms evolved. Full stop. However, most of these had absence of hard parts. You must be knowing about this term vertebrates, invertebrates. ठीक है, so the most of the organisms of this period were invertebrates, hard parts उसमें missing थे। ठीक है, as a result of which again you can understand there will be less fossils। ठीक है, thus देखो, thus there is scarcity of fossils found in the Proterozoic rocks। ठीक है, फैक्ट्स प्री के इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, कैन यू सी हाउ मच ऑफ द प्री कैम्ब्रियन इज द टोटल अर्थ हिस्ट्री? 88%। टोटल प्री कैम्ब्रियन जिसमें हमने हेडियन भी इंक्लूड किया था, इट इज ऑलमोस्ट 88% ऑफ द अर्थ हिस्ट्री। दैट मीन्स फेनोरोजोइक इज जस्ट रिप्रेजेंटिंग 12% ऑफ द अर्थ हिस्ट्री। ठीक है, सो दिस इज योर प्री कैम्ब्रियन। अब आते हैं फेनोरोजोइक में, और फेनोरोजोइक इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इयन, so can you see here zoic, the term zoic का मतलब क्या है? लाइफ फॉर्म्स। So as we said, what happened in the Phanerozoic? There was explosion of life. So this period is characterized by explosion of life, and thus the rocks belonging to Phanerozoic has abundance of fossils। अब बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज क्या है कि यहां पर जो डिविजन्स और सब डिविजन्स किए गए हैं, ठीक है, टाइम पीरियड में, these are based upon what? These are based upon these fossil records। ठीक है, so divisions and subdivisions in the Phanerozoic are based upon the fossil records। Division and subdivisions in Phanerozoic are based upon the fossil records। ठीक है, अब इसका एक एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं। हमने क्या किया, फेनोरोजोइक को डिवाइड किया है इन 3 पार्ट्स। ठीक है, इसको 3 एरा में डिवाइड कर रहे हैं हम। व्हाट आर दीज 3 एरा? द लाइफ फॉर्म्स विच आर ओल्डर, दे आर रेफर टू एज पेलियोजोइक। पेलियो का मतलब ओल्ड, जोइक मीन्स लाइफ। तो पेलियोजोइक, so it was here 542 million years, here it is 250 million years. ठीक है, so there is Paleozoic. Then comes the Mesozoic. Meso का मतलब middle aged, so Mesozoic. Boundary of the Mesozoic is around 65 million years. ठीक है, अब देखो यहां पर जो बाउंड्रीज बनाई गई हैं, these boundaries are on the basis of, as we talked about, the fossil records. So each of these boundaries represent what they are representing. They represent mass extinction episodes. ठीक है, so these are basically what? This was a mass extinction occurred here, where almost 90% of the species became extinct. Almost 90% of the species of that time period became extinct. ठीक है, like for example Paleozoic में one of the very dominant species were trilobites. And trilobites के साथ क्या हुआ? They became essentially extinct. Over a period of time there was evolution of other species also. So इसमें हमें दिखाई पड़ता है फर्दर जो डिवीजन है वो नए स्पीशीज का इवोल्यूशन हुआ और जो पुराने स्पीशीज थे उनमें एक्सटिंक्शन हुआ. So on the basis of that we are further dividing it into, you can see Paleozoic is divided into Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous and Permian. तो इसको हम याद रख सकते हैं cos DCP. ठीक है, C से कैम्ब्रियन, O से ऑर्डोविशियन, S stands for Silurian, D stands for Devonian, T stands again for Carboniferous and P stands for Permian. ठीक है, ये नंबर्स याद करना कोई जरूरी नहीं है. You remember the sequence, cos DCP. So Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous and Permian. Okay. So now let us see what were the main events which were taking place in the Paleozoic. So Paleozoic में number of events have taken place. पहले हम, because हमारा it is more important for us from the point of geomorphology, but it is also important for us from the point of biogeography. ठीक है, सो दोनों चीजें हमें ध्यान में रखनी. तो सबसे पहले अगर मैं जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इफ आई टॉक अबाउट, दिस इज अ पीरियड व्हेन वी फाइंड दैट देयर वर एटलीस्ट 2 more माउंटेन बिल्डिंग एपिसोड्स. ठीक है, इन द पेलियोजोइक. तो लिख लेते हैं इसको. पेलियोजोइक was characterized by 2 more fold mountain building episodes. 2 more fold mountain building episodes. तो फर्स्ट अगर मैं इसमें से बात करूं तो इट इज रेफर टू एज कैलेडोनियन, कैलेडोनियन ओरोजेनी। ओरोजेनी क्या होता है? माउंटेन बिल्डिंग एपिसोड, कैलेडोनियन ओरोजेनी एपिसोड, ठीक है। एंड इफ वी टॉक अबाउट कैलेडोनियन ओरोजेनी एपिसोड, मेनली ये कहां से शुरू होता है? इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम दिस सिलूरियन पीरियड एंड कंटिन्यूज इनटू पार्ट ऑफ डेवोनियन। एक्चुअली में पूरा ये सिलूरियन से नहीं स्टार्ट होता है, इट इज एक्चुअली स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम हियर, द लेट ऑर्डोविशियन से स्टार्ट होकर के okay. So we are simply saying and Permian. So if you talk about, it starts from here, late Ordovician से start होके primarily in the Silurian period there is this Caledonian orogeny and several mountains were formed in the Caledonian orogeny. Caledonian orogeny में कौन कौन से mountains form हुए? Mountains of northern Europe, ठीक है। सो माउंटेन्स ऑफ नॉर्दर्न यूरोप, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू माइट बी अवेयर, स्कॉटलैंड के बारे में सुना है? इट इज पार्ट ऑफ ब्रिटेन, यू माइट हैव सीन इट इज माउंटेनस कंट्री, so they were formed during this period. Also during this period there was part of Appalachian, part of Appalachian mountains were also formed during this period. ठीक है। So if I just show you, can you see? This is the time period of Cambrian time period. And in the Cambrian, you know, Pangaea के दो parts थे, Gondwana land and Laurasia. So at this point of time, Laurasia began to form, began to combine. ठीक है। So can you see now what will happen? ये Northern Europe जो है, it will go and collide with North America. ठीक है। This Siberia, it will collide with Northern Europe. ये बीच में एक ये प्लेट दिखाई दे रही छोटी सी लैंड, दिस इज एक्चुअली द कजाकिस्तान पार्ट, जो कि इसके बीच में सैंडविच्ड हो गया। ठीक है। सो एसेंशियली इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, इट वाज बिगिनिंग टू फॉर्म. So you see in the Silurian period. So can you see in the Silurian period there was now this northern Europe mountains, they are beginning to form. ठीक है. So mainly इनका formation कब हुआ? Silurian period में. That is the period when Caledonian orogeny was taking place. ठीक है. एक और चीज हो रहा था. Can you see this is Gondwana land and this is a sea that is separating, or the ocean separating North America and Gondwana land. Ultimately क्या होने लगा? North America began to move towards Gondwana. ठीक है, या फिर ये पूरा लोरेशिया गोंडवाना लैंड की तरफ मूव करने लगा. क्यों? इट इज बिकॉज दिस ओशन बिगैन टू सब. ठीक है, तो यहां पर एक ट्रेंच बन गया. ठीक है, सो इफ द ट्रेंच इज फॉर्म, टेल मी, will there be formation of mountains like Rockies and Andes? होगा. ठीक है, तो इसीलिए फर्स्ट पार्ट ऑफ एप्लेशन फॉर्म होना शुरू हो गया यहां पर. So that is what we have written. I hope it is clear. So it was happening when in the Silurian period. Then If you talk about next episode of mountain building, it is referred to as the Hercynian orogeny एपिसोड, हर्सीनियन ओरोजेनी एपिसोड। और हर्सीनियन की बात करें तो मेन पीरियड ऑफ द हर्सीनियन इज दिस, लेट डेवोनियन से ऑलमोस्ट एंड ऑफ डेवोनियन से स्टार्ट होता है। कार्बोनिफेरस इज द मेन पीरियड व्हेन दिस एसेंशियली अकर्ड। ठीक है, तो दिस इज द हर्सीनियन। और हर्सीनियन की बात करें तो this is the period when several mountains like Appalachian mountain formation was completed during this period. So now see, this is the Carboniferous period. Can you see what is happening to that ocean? That ocean has essentially reduced, and now North America is going to collide with the Gondwana land. And as this collision occurs with Africa, यहाँ पर कंप्लीट दैट फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द एप्लेशियंस विल बी टेकिंग प्लेस। ठीक है, और केवल मुझे ये हिस्ट्री पता है, सपोज ये अपने आप में एनफ है बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस को सॉल्व करने। लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, इन पास्ट वन क्वेश्चन हैज बीन आस्क्ड हाउ प्लेट टेक्टोनिक्स एक्सप्लेन्स द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ एप्लेशियन माउंटेन। ठीक है, तो कैन आई से कि प्लेट टेक्टोनिक्स विल एक्सप्लेन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ एप्लेशियन माउंटेन्स, क्योंकि एप्लेशियन माउंटेन्स का फॉर्मेशन 2 स्टेप्स में हुआ है। फर्स्ट स्टेप वाज ओशन कॉन्टिनेंट कोलिजन, जो भी हमने पीछे देखा था, एंड सेकेंड स्टेप वाज बेसिकली कैन वी से कॉन्टिनेंट कॉन्टिनेंट कोलिजन। ठीक है, तो मुझे कुछ भी नहीं पता है, जस्ट नो द हिस्ट्री एंड आई हैव स्टडीड प्लेट टेक्टोनिक्स। ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट कैन आई राइट एन आंसर इवन इफ आई वाज स्टक। इवन इसको मैंने अलग से कुछ प्रिपेयर नहीं किया था, स्टिल कैन आई राइट एन आंसर वेयर आई विल गेट एटलीस्ट 40% मार्क्स, आराम से मिल जाएगा। ठीक है, सो that was another event, very important event which has taken place. Now another very important event which has occurred, can you understand कि जब ये गोंडवाना लैंड, जब ये गोंडवाना पीरियड था, और सॉरी this carboniferous period was there, so this carboniferous period is also the period when the Pangea was beginning to form. Can you see what is happening? Laurasia is going to collide with Gondwana land to essentially lead to formation of the Pangea. So this was also the period when Pangea was being formed. And does it means that बहुत सारे collisions हुए होंगे? और याद करो, हाथ में फ्रैक्चर हो जाए, दीवार पे दे मारा, what will happen? Reactivation of the weak parts will take place. So can we say in this global tectonics at several places such phenomena would have occurred? Yes or no? ठीक है, so during this period several rift valleys across the world were formed, and in these rift valleys thick layer of vegetation was deposited which has become the major coal deposits of today. ठीक है, तो इसको भी लिख लेते हैं। During the Carboniferous period, Carboniferous period, the global tectonics led to reactivation of several ancient weak lineaments which developed which developed into rift valleys, ठीक है. रिफ्ट वैली को और भी हम क्या बोलते हैं? दे आर ऑल्सो रेफर टू एज ग्रेबन्स, रिफ्ट वैलीज और ग्रेबन्स. Full stop. For example, in India, this period is referred to as Gondwana period. This period is referred to as Gondwana period. And it was during this period, rift valleys of Narmada, Tapi, Son, Damodar, Mahanadi and Godavari were formed. Full stop. Similarly, in Europe, Rhine-Ruhr rift valleys. Rhine is the main river, Ruhr is its tributary. Rhine-Ruhr rift valley systems were formed. Full stop. In these rift valleys, thick layer of vegetational sequence was deposited. Thick layers of vegetational sequence was deposited, which led to formation of the present major coal deposits. ठीक है. So this was another very important event which has taken place. एक और चीज समझ सकते हो, like अगर मैं देखूं तो during this period, this Carboniferous period, can you see Gondwana land is actually where? Is it located near South Pole? Yes or no? It is located near South Pole. अगर इतना बड़ा कॉन्टिनेंट साउथ पोल की तरफ होगा, कैन वी से वेरी बिग ग्लेशियर वुड हैव बीन फॉर्म्ड ओवर इट? यस और नो? वेरी बिग ग्लेशियर वुड हैव बीन प्रेजेंट ओवर इट. एंड अगर इतना बड़ा ग्लेशियर प्रेजेंट है, कैन वी से देयर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी दैट सी लेवल वुड हैव फॉलन? ठीक है, सी लेवल वुड हैव फॉलन. In fact, can we say it would have led to a kind of climate change, because so much cold in the southern hemisphere would have been present because of it. So there would have been a climate change which would have occurred. ठीक है. So this is all which was happening when in this period of Paleozoic. अब Paleozoic में जो अभी हम देख रहे थे, एक important चीज क्या है? About the life forms. So you can very clearly see the Cambrian and Ordovician, ये जो दो पीरियड हैं, this is referred to as the age of invertebrates. Then there are two periods, Silurian and Devonian. These are referred to as the age of fishes. Then if you talk about Carboniferous and Permian, it is the age of amphibians. So इसको लिख लो, it is very important. सो सबसे पहले एज ऑफ इन्वर्टिब्रेट्स की बात करें, यू कैन सी इन दिस अर्ली पार्ट ऑफ द पेलियोजोइक फर्स्ट ऑर्गेनिजम्स विथ शेल्स बिगैन टू फॉर्म. ठीक है, फर्स्ट ऑर्गेनिजम्स विथ हार्ड पार्ट शेल्स बिगैन टू बी फॉर्म, और यही शेल्स डिपॉजिट हो गए, and that is the fossils which we are talking about, that there was abundance of fossils. So first organisms with shells began to form. और इसमें as I talked about, what was the most dominant species? It was trilobites. Trilobites were the most dominant species. At the end of Ordovician, first time we find that fishes began to form. So first fishes कब form होती हैं? At the end of Ordovician. ठीक है, फर्स्ट फिश. Can you understand? One thing is very clear. Till this time period, life was still limited to where? Oceans. ठीक है, till this time period, life was still limited to the oceans. देखो ये क्वेश्चन प्री में भी पूछ चुका है एक बार. They've asked a question, which is the correct sequence of evolution of species. ठीक है, so you should be aware about this. So ultimately there was formation of the first fishes. First time we find that जैसे ही हम सिलूरियन में पहुंचते हैं, first land plants begin to appear. So after the fishes there was the formation of the land plants. In the oceans, fishes became dominant species. ठीक है, that is why this is the age of fishes. So Silurian and Devonian. And यहां पर हमें फर्स्ट टाइम दिखाई पड़ता है इंसेक्ट्स. So first insects fossils are found. So that means at the end of Devonian we find that insects also evolved. So you can see very importantly, Paleozoic में can we say diversification of life began to take place. ठीक है, within the Paleozoic. So first insects began to be formed. पहले वाटर में रहते थे, देन धीरे धीरे इवोल्यूशन हुआ, एंड देयर वाज फॉर्मेशन ऑफ व्हाट? एम्फीबियंस, which will be able to live both on land as well as water. So fishes evolved into amphibians. ठीक है, so next in the sequence was the evolution of amphibians. So amphibians began to become abundant. Over a period of time amphibians जो थे उन्हीं से evolution होकर के what became? Reptiles. So next in the sequence came the reptiles. ठीक है, and as I told you, which is the end of Paleozoic? It is the mass extinction episode which occurred in the world. Almost 90% of the species of the oceans, they became extinct, and trilobites were the major species which became totally extinct. ठीक है, so this is the period of Paleozoic. I hope it is clear. ठीक है, ये sequence याद रखना, that is more important. Then comes Mesozoic. आई होप कि ये एक ऐसा नाम है जो ज़्यादा फेमिलियर होता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल मीसोजोइक में देर वॉज फर्स्ट ट्रायसिक, देन वॉज जुरासिक, एंड देन केम द क्रिटेशियस. तो मीसोजोइक इज डिवाइडेड इनटू थ्री पीरियड्स. तो ये थ्री पीरियड्स कौन से हैं? फर्स्ट इज ट्रायसिक, देन इट इज जुरासिक, and then it is Cretaceous. Triassic, Jurassic and Cretaceous. And you can understand this Mesozoic era is referred to as the age of reptiles. You know, the largest species that the earth has seen, dinosaurs, they were dominant species during this period. ठीक है, so Triassic, Jurassic and Cretaceous, this is the sequence. Now very clearly in this period what we find, dinosaurs were dominant species, It is from these dinosaurs there was formation of the first birds. ठीक है, जुरासिक पार्क मूवी में भी देखा होगा how the first birds actually were formed from these dinosaurs itself. So further evolution take place and the avian, if you talk about, the species was developed. बहुत important है, ये चीज याद रखना है. Can you see? It is this period that is the beginning of Cretaceous, first flowering plants. फर्स्ट फ्लावरिंग प्लांट्स पर. बाद में जब हम बात करेंगे फ्लोरिस्टिक रीजन्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, तो हम देखेंगे कि जो सदर्न कॉन्टिनेंट्स हैं उसमें फ्लोरा में बहुत सिमिलैरिटीज मिलती हैं. ठीक है, देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ सिमिलैरिटीज इन द फ्लोरा ऑफ द सदर्न कॉन्टिनेंट्स. ठीक है, कैन वी से these similarities in the flora of the southern continents would be essentially because, can you see, Triassic में still this Pangea is there. Ultimately क्या हुआ, 200 million years ago, around in late Triassic period, the Pangea began to break. This arm Tethys sea began to get open. ठीक है, Jurassic, if you talk about, can you see, अभी भी ये southern continents हैं, are they very far away from each other? They are still near to each other. ठीक है, when we are talking about the Cretaceous period, अब ये separate होने लगे हैं, but can we say they are still not very far? ठीक है, तो हम देखेंगे कि जो modern flowering plants उनको बोलते हैं angiosperms. ठीक है, and what is very important characteristic of these angiosperms, they can produce seeds, they can survive as seeds. ठीक है, and tell me, can we say कि seeds can easily disperse by wind and water? ठीक है, so we will see कि इनका जो evolution था, it somewhere occurred in Africa, but essentially it also dispersed to South America, it also dispersed to India. ठीक है, फिर इंडिया ये नोआ आर्क की तरह चला गया ऊपर. ठीक है, और जाकर के कहां पे अटैच हो गया, एशिया में. तो ये फ्लावरिंग प्लांट जो इंडिया में थे वो कहां पे पहुंच गए, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में भी पहुंच गए. ठीक है, सो एसेंशियली वी हैव टू रिमेंबर दिस, दैट फर्स्ट फ्लावरिंग प्लांट्स व्हेन दे इवॉल्व्ड, दिस particularly the Gondwana land continents were not very far away from each other, and this helped in dispersal. This explains why there is so many similar species which are found in these forests when it comes to flora, not fauna. ठीक है, so that is the phenomena which was occurring. Mesozoic का end क्या है, again a mass extinction episode occurred, and this was the time period when there was extinction of the dinosaurs and many other species took place. ठीक है, so this is the biological, if you talk about phenomena which have occurred in the Mesozoic. Mesozoic में अगर हम बात करें तो what are the geological phenomena which are important for us to know? As we said, it was in the Triassic period when the formation of Pangea was completed. तो लिख लो इसको. It was in the Triassic period. It was in the Triassic period the formation of Pangea was completed. ठीक है, so that is one thing. Then another very important phenomena क्या हुआ, it was in the late Triassic, early Jurassic, when Pangea began to break. ठीक है, उससे पहले जो Pangea की हम बात कर रहे थे, you can understand one thing. So this is the Pangea, and Pangea was surrounded by a large ocean. उस ओशन का नाम क्या था, इट्स नेम वॉज पेंथाल्सा. ठीक है, So its name was Penthalsa. One important thing is, अगर सपोज करो एक स्टेटमेंट आता है, all continental parts were attached to Pangaea. True or false? It is false. There was still some parts which were not part of the Pangaea. ठीक है? So it was, next आगे लिखो, in the Jurassic period, Pangaea began to break into two parts. So you know what are the name of these two parts? The southern part was Gondwana land and the northern part was Laurasia. Southern part was Gondwana land and the northern part was Laurasia. Okay. So again, this is something, a phenomena which has occurred in the Jurassic. In Cretaceous, what has happened? Further later in the Cretaceous, these two parts further broke down into smaller pieces. So लिख लो इसको. Later in Cretaceous, these two parts, later in the Cretaceous, these two parts further broke down into smaller pieces. And began to drift away from each other. ठीक है. अब देखो कई बार क्या होता है ना कि लाइफ इज ऑल अबाउट डिटेल्स. हाउ कीनली वी स्टडी थिंग्स, हाउ विथ फोकस वी स्टडी थिंग्स, इट इज ऑल अबाउट द डिटेल्स. ठीक है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अब ये डायग्राम मैंने तुम्हें दे दिया सपोज. ठीक है. यहां पे इंडियन पेनिनसुला दिख रहा है. कैन यू सी ईस्टर्न पार्ट ऑफ द इंडियन पेनिनसुला, इट हैज ब्रोकन अवे फ्रॉम ऑस्ट्रेलिया एंड एंटार्क्टिका. ठीक है. बट कैन यू सी वेस्टर्न पार्ट स्टिल मडागास्कर इज अटैच टू इट. ठीक है. अगर सपोज करो कि प्रीलिम्स में क्वेश्चन अगर ऐसा पूछता है, विच वन ऑफ दीज वाज फॉर्म्ड फर्स्ट, द ईस्ट कोस्ट ऑफ इंडिया और द वेस्ट कोस्ट ऑफ इंडिया? ऑब्वियसली इट वुड बी ईस्ट कोस्ट ऑफ इंडिया. मेंस में क्वेश्चन पूछ चुका है, डिफरेंशिएट द टू कोस्ट ऑफ इंडिया ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इवोल्यूशन, स्ट्रक्चर एंड ड्रेनेज. ठीक है. सो मेनी टाइम्स इट इज देयर, जस्ट वी आर नॉट फोकसिंग इनफ. क्योंकि हमें क्या चाहिए, हमें और कंटेंट चाहिए पढ़ने के लिए. रेडीमेड खुद से फोकस करने की आदत नहीं है. ठीक है. सो अगेन दीज मैप्स व्हेन यू गो होम टुडे, ठीक है, विल अपलोड इट, यू हैव टू सी देम वेरी प्रॉपरली. पर्टिकुलरली मीसोजोइक से you have to be very very careful, because suppose you are talking about continental drift in the examination. एक तरीका तो है कि भाई मैंने continental drift में लिख दिया कि क्या हुआ, बट क्या मैं उसको डायग्राम्स के साथ सपोर्ट कर सकता हूं? how there was shifting, how there was drifting, how they break, मल्टीपल इस तरह के छोटे छोटे डायग्राम्स बनाकर. इफ आई एम एबल टू डू सो, बिलीव मी, उसी क्वेश्चन में कम से कम 2 से 3 नंबर तुम्हारे. ठीक है. सो अगेन दैट इज समथिंग विच इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो दैट इज द पीरियड ऑफ मीसोजोइक. नाउ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट विच वाज अकरिंग इन द मीसोजोइक and the late Mesozoic particularly, it is believed that Cretaceous period Cretaceous was the period when tectonics was very active in the globe. ठीक है. So it is a very active, volcanism. टेक्टोनिक यहां पर क्या है? Volcanism was occurring in the Cretaceous period. ठीक है, तो बाय लेट क्रिटेशियस एक फिनोमेना होगा. अब यहां पर देखने की पहले कोशिश करो. देयर आर सपोज टू सिनेरियोज ए एंड बी. ठीक है, हम बाद में देखेंगे. वी विल सी दैट मिड ओशियनिक ridges, you know, they are present in the oceans. Their shapes and sizes can vary. Mid oceanic ridges can be tall and narrow. They can be wide and not so much tall. ठीक है, they can be like plateaus. Now the question is, why mid oceanic ridges are high? Mid oceanic ridges are high because at that time when they are formed, the rocks are very hot. So anything which is hot, can we say it will expand in size? ठीक है, उसका साइज एक्सपैंड करेगा, इसलिए मिड ओशियनिक रिजेस ऊंची होती है. व्हेन सी फ्लोर स्प्रेडिंग इज टेकिंग प्लेस, ठीक है, अगर वो केवल इससे बना हुआ है कि वहां पर मटेरियल पाइल अप हो गया है, तो व्हेन द सी फ्लोर स्प्रेडिंग विल अकर, तब वो मटेरियल कहां चला गया. ठीक है, सो व्हाट इज एक्चुअली हैपनिंग एज द सी फ्लोर स्प्रेडिंग इज टेकिंग प्लेस, एज दे मूव अवे फ्रॉम दैट रिज रीजन, दे ऑल्सो कूल डाउन. So as they cool down, they will shrink in size, and because of that, the ocean floor becomes down. ठीक है, so अब इस फंडे को अगर हम लगाएं तो दो सिचुएशंस हैं. एक सिचुएशन ऐसी है जहां पर रिज का शेप कुछ ऐसा बन रहा है. Then there is this situation where the ridge is more like this. So tell me, in which case the sea floor spreading rate is fast? It is the first one. Here what is happening? The sea floor spreading rate is fast. So because it is fast, even before the rocks have cooled down, they have shifted away from the ridge region. ठीक है, और इसीलिए रिज कैसी हो जा रही है? It becomes broad like a plateau. Here what is happening? Because the sea floor spreading rate is slow. ठीक है, so if it is slow, does it means that the rocks will only move, these rocks are only moving when they have become what? Sufficiently cooled down, and thus they have shrunk, and that is why ये कैसा हो जा रहा है? It becomes narrow. Do you get my point? अब मुझे ये बताओ कि if this is taking place, will there be sea level change also associated with it? When this is the situation, can I say sea level कम हो जाएगा? Sea level will fall? Yes or no? Because basin का size बड़ा हो गया. In this case, basin size is reducing. Yes or no? क्योंकि इतना बड़ा सा ridge उसको ऑक्यूपाई कर ले रहा है. तो can I say, will there be rise in sea level? Here what will happen? There will be fall in sea level. ठीक है, so at the end of Cretaceous, what was happening? There is a phenomena which is referred to as Cretaceous floods. ठीक है, and Cretaceous floods में क्या हुआ? The sea level, it is believed that at that time became 200 meters more than it is today. Even if we melt all the glaciers, then also this much sea level cannot rise. That means there must be some tectonic reasons for this rise in the sea level. Okay, so again it was related with what? That the Cretaceous period was the period when volcanism was very active, sea floor spreading rates were fast, and thus what was happening? Ridges were very broad, and thus the sea level rose. सिंपल सी बात है, ये समझ में आई कि नहीं बात, कि अगर रॉक्स गर्म है, इफ दे आर हॉट दे विल बी हाई, इफ दे आर कूल कोल्ड व्हाट विल हैपन, दे विल श्रिंक। ठीक है, तो अगर यहां पर ये सी फ्लोर स्प्रेडिंग रेट फास्ट हो रहा है, कैन आई से कि इवन बिफोर द रॉक्स हैव कूल्ड दे हैव बीन मूव्ड अवे। ठीक है, सो इन दिस केस व्हाट विल हैपन विद द रिज, इट विल बी ब्रॉडर। ठीक है, तो रिज का साइज बड़ा होगा, और रिज का साइज बड़ा है तो ओवरऑल ये बेसिन का साइज क्या हो जाएगा, इट विल बी रिड्यूस्ड, इट्स वॉल्यूम विल बी लेसर। ठीक है, अगर मैं कोई बाल्टी में पानी लूं और उसमें इफ आई कीप सम ब्रिक्स व्हाट विल हैपन, वाटर विल कम आउट। ठीक है, सो सी लेवल विल बी राइजिंग। हियर व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, बिकॉज दिस सी फ्लोर स्प्रेडिंग रेट इज स्लो, only after the rocks have sufficiently become cold and shrunk, then only they are moving up, and thus the ridge remains what, narrow, and the volume of the ridge is lesser. So the volume of the basin becomes what, it becomes greater, and thus what will happen, there will be fall in sea level associated. ठीक है, so Cretaceous was the period जब क्या हो रहा था, there was this phenomena, this was the feature which was taking place in the Cretaceous. तो लिख लेते हैं, late Cretaceous particularly was characterized by fast sea floor spreading rates, full stop. As a result, the oceanic ridges were very wide, and occupied large volumes of ocean basin. Full stop. This resulted in rise in sea level, which is believed to be more than 200 meters, from the present sea level. Full stop. This phenomena is referred to as Cretaceous floods. The Cretaceous floods. ठीक है, so all this was happening in the Mesozoic period. Then comes the Cenozoic. तो अगर हम Cenozoic को देखें तो can you see Cenozoic is divided into two periods, and which are these periods? Tertiary and Quaternary. So it is divided into two periods. One is tertiary and the most recent is the Quaternary. ठीक है, और अब यहां पर भी अगर हम बात करें टर्शरी एंड क्वार्टरनरी में, तो इसके जो इपोक्स हैं उसको याद रखने के लिए एक सीक्वेंस है, इट इज पियोम। ठीक है, पियोम। तो इफ वी टॉक अबाउट दिस इज, सबसे पहले क्या आएगा, पेलियो विल बी द फर्स्ट, सो इट इज Paleocene, then it is E, there will be Eocene, then O, Oligocene, then there is M, there is Miocene, then there is Pliocene. ठीक है, तो ये सभी किसके पार्ट हैं? दीज आर पार्ट ऑफ टर्शियरी. ठीक है, क्वार्टरनरी इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, इनका जो टाइम पीरियड है, यू नो, इट इज 65 मिलियन ईयर्स से स्टार्ट होता है. एंड दिस बाउंड्री between tertiary and quaternary, it is located around 1.6 million years, around 1.6 million years. ठीक है, quaternary is divided into two. One is Pleistocene. You might have seen that cartoon Ice Age. So it is about that Pleistocene. ठीक है, and then there is Holocene, which is the present time. So Holocene और Pleistocene, Holocene कब स्टार्ट होता है? अराउंड 10,000 years ago. ठीक है, so this is the phenomena or this is the time scale which is there. अब इसमें देखें कि phenomena कौन कौन से हुए हैं. So most important thing, tertiary is the period which is characterized by formation of young fold mountains. So the latest episode of fold mountain building has occurred in the tertiary. So लिख लो इसको, the latest episode of fold mountain building has occurred in the tertiary. The latest episode of fold mountain building has occurred in the tertiary period, as the continents continued to drift, So we know continental drift चलता रहा इस period में, and as a result what happened, several places collision between the plates occurred. That has led to what? That has led to the formation of the new fold mountains, young fold mountains. ठीक है, so लिख लो, आगे लिखो, the young fold mountains like so अगर सीक्वेंस में जाएं तो सबसे पहला यंग फोल्ड माउंटेन जो बनना शुरू हुआ था, इट वाज एंडीज. ठीक है, so like Andes, Rockies, Himalayas, Alps, etc. were formed during this period. ठीक है, लाइक हम देखेंगे बाद में कि जो सबसे पहले हिमालयाज का फॉर्मेशन चालू होता है, इट बिगिंस इन द ईओसीन पीरियड. ठीक है, तो हिमालयाज की जो रेंजेस, ट्रांस हिमालयन रेंजेस हैं, like you might be knowing Karakoram range. ठीक है, so they began to form first time in the Eocene. Then there was formation of the Tethys, वो Oligocene. And then if you talk about in the Oligocene, late Oligocene, your main Himalayas also began to be formed. ठीक है, then उसके बाद जब हम मायोसीन, लेट मायोसीन में पहुंचते हैं, तब जा करके हमें दिखाई पड़ता है कि there is middle Himalayas का formation start होता है. Late Pliocene में we find that the formation of the Shivalik ranges essentially began, which continued into the Pleistocene period. So that is very important event which has taken place during this period. So ये एक important है जो हमें याद रखना है. दूसरा हमें important एक इसको याद रखना है, Pliocene. ठीक है, so आगे लिखते हैं. Another important episode has been the Pliocene rifting has been the Pliocene rift formation, जो faulting हमने बात की थी. So stop. During this period, important structures of the world like you might be aware, have you heard about the term Great African Rift Valley? ठीक है. So the Great African Rift Valley is in the East Africa. There is a rift valley formed, which is indicative a new divergent boundary is being formed. इसका मतलब जो ईस्टर्न अफ्रीका है, it is now going to become separate from rest of the Africa. Although we will not be there to see because it will take millions of years for it to happen. ठीक है. So like the Great African Rift Valley, Lake Baikal, Dead Sea, etc. were formed. ठीक है. तो ये सब रिफ्टिंग के फिनोमेना से इनका फॉर्मेशन. देन अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट एपिसोड इज प्लीस्टोसीन. और प्लीस्टोसीन किसके लिए फेमस है? प्लीस्टोसीन इज फेमस फॉर द क्लाइमेट चेंजेस विच हैव अकर्ड, ग्लेशिएशन एंड डिग्लेशिएशन एपिसोड. सो लिख लो इसको. ड्यूरिंग द प्लीस्टोसीन at least four glacial and four interglacial phases have occurred. So 4 glacial and 4 interglacial phases have occurred. और बाद में भी देखेंगे इसको. यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड टेम्परेचर ऑफ द अर्थ इज साइक्लिक लाइक दिस. ठीक है. सो व्हेन द टेम्परेचर इज डिक्लाइनिंग, रिमेंबर हमने बात किया था डायनेमिक इक्विलिब्रियम. ठीक है. सो टेम्परेचर्स रिमेन इन डायनेमिक इक्विलिब्रियम, एक फिक्स इक्विलिब्रियम नहीं होता. सो देयर इज द लोअर पार्ट. व्हेन दिस वाज हैपनिंग, इट वाज ग्लेशियल पीरियड. When the temperatures are rising, that is the interglacial phase. ठीक है. So when at the end of the Pleistocene, towards the end of the Pleistocene, when the last ice age finished, and what happened? The temperatures have again begun to rise now. ठीक है. और that means क्या हम इसका मतलब ये कह सकते हैं कि global warming which is occurring today, this global warming was bound to happen? Yes, it was bound to happen, but not in such a short period of time. ठीक है. What we have done, we have accelerated this phenomena of global warming. It would have occurred over a very long period of time otherwise. But human beings, they have altered so many things. So that is, if you talk about, this is the glacial and interglacial phases. We will see that this period has had huge impact on the landforms of the world. ठीक है. Like for example, अगर ग्लेशियर्स, बहुत सारी चीज़ों पे इम्पैक्ट हुआ. Like अगर हम बात करें तो have you heard about alpine vegetation? ठीक है. So alpine vegetation हम देखेंगे कि कहाँ पर फॉर्म हुआ था. Alpine vegetation was formed in Scandinavia. ठीक है. फिर क्या हुआ कि इट वॉज प्रेजेंट इन स्कैंडिनेविया. स्कैंडिनेविया से जैसे जैसे आइस शीट्स बढ़ती गई तो वो क्या हुआ, साउथ की तरफ आने लगा. इट बिगैन टू एक्सटेंड टुवर्ड्स साउथ, एंड एज इट एक्सटेंडेड टुवर्ड्स साउथ, कैन आई से कि यहां पर उसको चेन ऑफ माउंटेन्स मिल जाएगा, एल्प्स एंड हिमालयस. ठीक है. बाद में जब इंटरग्लेशियल फेज आ गया, व्हेन देयर इज इंटरग्लेशियल फेज एंड वार्मिंग अकर्ड, तो दिस प्लेसेस विल नॉट हैव alpine vegetation, but can I say still there are cold places found in the mountains? So will the alpine vegetation found a place of refuge? It will find a place of refuge. And this is the reason we will be finding that alpine vegetation is found in almost all the continents where such high mountains are present. So it has dispersed in this manner. तो बाद में देखेंगे it has played very important role in the dispersal of the species and explains the present distribution of the species which are there. ठीक है? So that is essentially the case of the Pleistocene. अब अगर थोड़ा सा बायोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट पे बात करूं तो you can understand it is the age of mammals. If you talk about Cenozoic, ठीक है, we will be finding that when we are talking about the age of mammals, the first mammals to form, ठीक है, almost at the beginning of Cenozoic, the first mammals to form, these were monotremes. ठीक है, they were the first mammals to form. Like you might have heard about the duckbill platypus, egg-laying mammal. सुना है? ठीक है. So they were basically what? They were the early mammals. Then क्या हुआ? They further evolved and ये mammals क्या बन गए? These became the marsupials. ठीक है. So marsupials are also what? They are also type of mammals. Ultimately, there was evolution of placental mammals. ठीक है? Placental mammals are the ones which can carry their babies in their womb, and thus they are more protected. ठीक है? So ultimately, if you talk about, this is how the mammals, mammalia, fauna, in fact, has evolved over a period of time. तो ये सीक्वेंस याद रखना है, मोनोट्रीम्स, मार्सुपियल्स एंड प्लेसेंटल्स. आज की डेट में ऑब्वियसली प्लेसेंटल्स mammals were the last to develop. So can we say they would be more superior? Because always what is happening? Evolution of species is taking place. So with evolution, genetic superiority is occurring. So they were essentially more superior. So इन्होंने क्या किया? बाकी जहां जहां पे ये फैले, wherever they dispersed, they killed the other mammals. ठीक है? So they killed the marsupials. But what happened? If we look into, like for example, this is the Jurassic period, Cretaceous period. Can you see 50 million years ago, early Cenozoic? Can you see Australia got actually drifted away from rest of the continents early on? And if it got drifted away from rest of the continents early on, can we say it is possible that marsupials can remain safe here? Yes or no? Because placentals evolved later on. Okay. So this is the reason we find that in Australia there is presence of the marsupials because of this continental drift which has taken place. Okay. So that is how we find that the sequence of the species which has evolved. Now one thing is very clear, हम इसको भले ही बोल रहे हैं age of mammals, but it is according to some biologists and geographers, it is a misnomer. Can we say that presently we find actually the greatest diversity of species which is found? If you talk about the plants, there is huge diversity. If you talk about the animals, there is huge diversity. Okay? So this nomenclature actually is based upon the dominance of the species. Okay? So it is not about the variety, it is about the dominance. So mammals, no doubt, the mammals are the dominant species of today. This similar phenomena is now taking place where? In Holocene. And who has become the most dominant species? It is the human beings. Okay? So in recent terms, a term has been coined to signify this dominance, and this term is Anthropocene. Anthropocene. So what is essentially Anthropocene? Anthropocene is the part of the Holocene where human beings became the dominant species. ठीक है. So it is part of the Holocene where the humans have become the dominant species. Dominant species. Now the question is when the Anthropocene has started. So about the beginning of Anthropocene, there are two differing views. One view says that the Anthropocene should ideally be said to have started with Industrial Revolution, because it is this time period when humans actually got the tools to modify the nature at very large scale. While the other view says that even if we look at the world, earliest biggest modifications were done by agriculture. Even today, in terms of spatial expansion, agriculture is an activity which has most damaging effect. Take the case of rainforests, Amazon rainforest. There, the most important activity which is leading to deforestation, it is the plantation agriculture. Okay. So ideally, according to this second view, the beginning of the Anthropocene should be taken as the agricultural revolution. Okay. So there are two differing views about the beginning of the Anthropocene. लिख लेते हैं इसको. There are two differing views about the beginning of the Anthropocene. Beginning of the Anthropocene. So stop. One view suggests that it should be treated as the beginning of Industrial Revolution. Treated as the beginning of Industrial Revolution. With Industrial Revolution, full stop, with Industrial Revolution, humans acquired the necessary tools to alter the nature at large scale. At large scale. Okay, so this is first view. Change the point. Another view suggests that agricultural revolution should be taken as the beginning of Anthropocene. As it is from here the humans began to assert themselves. Okay, so this is the aspect of Anthropocene. Can we say कि यार कभी भी शुरू हुआ Anthropocene, we should be more concerned about कि end नहीं होना चाहिए. The way we are behaving these days, can we say that Anthropocene can very soon end also? The way the climate change is taking place, global warming is taking place, the way we have created, for example, nuclear weapons, we don't know when it will end. In fact, you can understand there are some technologies which you cannot undo them. And tell me, can we say AI is one type of technology which cannot be undone? And what will remain of humans and humanness? It is a big question mark for the future. Okay. So this is the thing that our concern more should be, rather than of the beginning of the Anthropocene, we should be more concerned about that it should not end. Okay. So I hope this topic of today was fruitful for you. You will see कि ये जितना आज जो हमने पढ़ा है ना, it will provide you that necessary link. जो classes में again and again many terms will come. When we'll study biogeography, we'll talk about how the dispersal etc. has occurred with time period. So it will be very very useful. लेकिन इसकी usefulness के लिए बहुत important क्या है कि जब हम क्लास में बैठे तो ये सारे पॉइंट्स याद हो, so that we are able to relate, we are able to make mental pictures when we are reading them. ठीक है. Okay. Some announcements are there, like ये ऑनलाइन वालों के लिए. Today was the last class on YouTube because 1 week we had said that it will be open. So from 12th of June the class will not be open like अभी तक जैसा रहा है. ऐप में थोड़ा सा इशू था चैट ऑप्शन का. It will be resolved before the class on Monday. And for online students, material is already being in the process of being dispatched, so you'll get it very quickly. And the most important thing, do share the good quality work that we are doing to your friends. If you are watching on YouTube, please like the videos. ठीक है. देखो मैं चिल्ला चिल्ला के तो बोल नहीं सकता हूँ कि लाइक करो, लेकिन जेंटली पोलाइटली बोल सकता हूँ. तुम लोगों का फर्ज बनता है फॉर योर फेलो स्टूडेंट्स. यू नो हाउ मच दे हैव टू अल्टीमेटली सफर. वंस यू डू योर फाउंडेशंस एट रॉन्ग प्लेसेस, half of your chance of getting selected is gone. In fact, more than half. Later the students come to me. जब मेरे पास स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं कि सर फाउंडेशन करना है और दे टॉक कि ले नहीं ले डिलेमा, तो मैं उनको यही कहता हूँ कि देख तेरे को अगर तेरा ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल रहा टिल द एंड, यू विल विजिट मी वंस. एक बार अपनी लाइफ में आएगा ज़रूर, चाहे वो मेरे यहाँ टेस्ट सीरीज करने आए, बाद में 500 प्लस करने आए, यू विल कम टू मी. एंड व्हेन यू विल डू द क्लासेस एट दैट टाइम, देन यू विल रिग्रेट कि फाउंडेशन मैंने यहीं से क्यों नहीं किया. ठीक है. सो अगेन मेक श्योर कि बाकी लोगों को भी पता चले, और every person who will be referring and bringing new admissions will be given some discounts and other many things in the courses. ठीक है. In fact, it is written that 2K discount will be given. That means अगर फीस पे कर दी है तो it will be refunded. If you have not paid full fee तो उसमें से वो डिडक्ट होता है. ओके. ठीक है. सो दैट इज हाउ द थिंग्स विल बी देयर. सो मेन क्लासेस नाउ वी आर गोइंग टू स्टार्ट. एक टॉपिक एक्चुअली हो भी चुका है, द इंटीरियर ऑफ अर्थ. ठीक है. यू माइट हैव सीन प्रांजल सर ऑल्सो टुक, आई थिंक क्वेश्चन आंसर्स भी लिए थे. ठीक है. सो अगेन द वे इट विल बी लाइक क्लास में हम क्वेश्चन आंसर्स भी करते रहेंगे. विच एवर द इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस आर देयर विल कवर इन द क्लास इटसेल्फ. इतने दिनों में एक चीज तुम लोगों को समझ में आ गई होगी, बियॉन्ड दिस यू डोंट नीड कंटेंट फर्दर. दिस कंटेंट इज मोर देन इनफ. योर सिलेक्शन विल दैट मीन्स बी फंक्शन ऑफ टू थिंग्स, योर मेमोराइजेशन एंड योर प्रैक्टिस. यही दो चीजें डिफाइन करेंगे. ठीक है. ओके. सो गुड बाय फॉर टुडे. विल मीट ऑन मंडे. वन मोर थिंग, तुम लोग जा सकते हो. ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स से मैं बात कर रहा हूँ. फॉर द ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स वन थिंग, लाइक अभी जैसे क्लास खत्म हो गई है, तो आई विल बी देयर live if you want. If someone has to ask questions after the class, 15-20 minutes, even 30 minutes, I can sit and answer your query. So that will not be an issue. Also, we will keep one weekly doubt clearing session. ठीक है, एंड यू विल ऑल्सो गेट प्रिंटेड नोट्स विच आर बीइंग कोरियर टू, तो डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट, वो मिल जाएगा टिल द टाइम। अगर सपोज करो कि लेट भी हो रहा है, विल सेंड यू द सॉफ्ट कॉपी ऑफ दोज पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक्स विच वर टू बी, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल नेक्स्ट वीक के टॉपिक। विंडो एक्सेस नहीं मिलेगा, क्योंकि अगर एक बार क्लास विंडो में जाती है तो उसके अगले दिन टेलीग्राम पे आ जाए, वो इसीलिए essentially the classes will be on Android. It is related with the safety, security of the classes. ठीक है, और किसी को कुछ पूछना है तो पूछ सकते हो, आई एम स्टिल हियर, और विल स्टॉप फॉर टुडे। Okay, so we'll stop for today. Goodbye. Take care. We'll meet on Monday.